This is this between us.
The number one podcast in the world.
This is
the JBU.Show featuring Austin,
from the Miller Talk Podcast,
ALLAN,
the American Sincerest,
and now your host,
Cam Allen.
All right, how's it going, everybody? My name is Chris, and this is the JBU.Show. And starting off tonight, we check in with our favorite professor, Professor Jing, to see what the latest is.
Good morning, YouTube. So I was supposed to talk about my upcoming classes today, but something traumatic happened to me this past week, and I want to share it with everyone. I'm going to file a lawsuit, and so I need to be careful about what I say. I can't divulge too much information, so I apologize ahead of time if some information, if the narrative can be incoherent or confusing sometimes. So let me first explain to you.
You're never incoherent
the
or
details
confusing.
of
We're
what
always
happened.
right with you.
I often take my two boys, Chris and Bo. Chris is 7 years old. Bo is 4. And this is our first time together back in Canada to visit their grandparents.
Of course he's Canadian. Of course he is. Or at least dual Canadian Chinese, because he also lives in Beijing, apparently. But that just, of course.
Unfortunately, their mother and my daughter cannot join us because whereas I and my boys are Canadian citizens, my wife is a Chinese citizen, and we could not get her the tourist visa on account of the fact that we're poor. So it's been a very hard summer for me because my two boys are a handful. They have different personalities, they have different interests, and my mind is preoccupied with saving the world. So I've not been as attentive as a father as I should have been, but
his mind is preoccupied with saving the world, guys. So he hasn't been able to watch his kids. What can I say? I understand.
I have tried my best to give my kids the best possible experience. So every day we're outside in the park or in the pool or in the cottage somewhere, making sure they're enjoying the great outdoors. So on Sunday, we went to a public pool, and we've been to many public pools. Chris is a great swimmer, and he really enjoys the pool. His brother, Bo, is not a great swimmer, doesn't know how to swim, and so I need to take care of him. And Bo is often very problematic. He has behavioral issues for many reasons. The first is that he's a middle child, so he often feels neglected and doesn't get enough attention from his parents, so he acts out, he misbehaves. He's also in competition with his brother, Chris, who unfortunately is very competitive, and as a result, Bo feels insecure, especially in the pool because Chris is a great swimmer and Bo doesn't know how to swim. But Bo doesn't really like swimming, and he misbehaves, and so what he does is he gets into trouble. So that day he was rubbing
Little
his
boys
eyes
are not
with
known
chlorine,
for
which
getting
is
into
which is
trouble.
making his eyes itchy. I'm annoyed by this. Bo is very good at annoying me. I take him in the shower. I try to wash off the
Sounds like he
chlorine
doesn't
with
like this
water,
kid.
but Bo just screams. I spank him to try to get him
Oh.
to cooperate. I don't like to be physical with my children. I have 3 children. I'm very gentle with both Chris and my daughter, but sometimes
But that middle
with
child,
Bo,
he's a
I
real
need to
bastard.
spank him or I need to scold him because otherwise he doesn't really pay attention. He's always testing boundaries, and but sometimes because I'm under so much stress, I can overreact. So
I can already tell that this is not going to go over well in a YMCA in Canada or wherever it is. He said the pool. He didn't say where, but I'm guessing it's a YMCA. I already know it's not going to go over well in Canada. Now look, I get it. Sometimes you got to beat them kids. They don't listen. I got to tell you, it sure sounds like, he dotes on the younger and the older kid and just absolutely hates his middle child and beats the shit out of it. That's sure what it sounds like anyway. But let's see where the discrimination part comes in.
I was slapping him. And then one of the patrons confronted me and told me, I mean, he was actually very confrontational. He threatened to kill me if I continued to hit my child. And then I confronted him, and then the staff got involved, okay? And the staff talked to me. I explained the situation to them, that Bo often misbehaves, and even though I don't want to be physical with him, sometimes I'm forced to be physical with him in order for him to understand the gravity of the situation. And the response is, "Oh, I understand. You're an Asian parent." And I said, "That's not the issue. It's not that."
Okay, so the problem isn't the guy that told him to stop smacking his kid around. The problem is that they called him an Asian parent. Looks like an Asian parent to me.
I'm an Asian parent. It's just like Bo has a distinct personality, and I need counter strategies in order
I get
to better
it. He's the middle child.
control
You
his
don't like
behavior.
him. Sometimes you gotta beat the shit out of him.
They asked for my name and my phone number. I gave it to them, assuming that they will call Child Protective Services or the police for a checkup. And I understand that. That's standard procedure. It makes total sense. They saw a parent abusing the child. Of course, they're going to report this to the higher authorities.
His lawyer's gonna be
But the
pissed
staff was
he
really
made this
nice, and I was
video.
really cooperative with them. I was extremely forthcoming. I tried my best to explain the situation to them. They told me that this is not a big deal and that I could leave. Okay, so I dressed my boys. This is in the change room. It's a public change room. And as we're as we're about to leave, there's a large lifeguard. Okay, he's a teenager. Okay, but he's very tall and muscular, and he's white. And he stares down at me and says,
Oh, he's
"Our
white.
boss would like you to stay." And he says it in a very menacing and confrontational manner. And it was intentional that he did it that way. But I didn't want a confrontation, so I basically agreed to stay. I assumed they called the police, and the police would come interview me, and I would explain what happened, okay? So I'm in the change room, and what they're doing now is they're asking all the patrons to leave the change room. And they have two tall, muscular, white lifeguards blocking the corridor so that I can't leave, but patrons can't come in as well. And so what happened is, in effect, they turned the change room into a detention center, a holding cell, basically. And at this point, I'm too shell-shocked to really process what's going on, because at this point, I am at risk of losing my children. I told the staff, listen, we're citizens of Canada, but we're visiting from Beijing for the summer, and we're leaving next week. We have a flight next week to go back to Beijing. Their mother is not here. My boys don't speak English, okay? So I'm trying to explain to them how awkward my situation is. And they don't care. So I'm in this holding facility, and I'm spending like an hour, at least an hour, trying to strategize about how to talk to the police. Because as a father, my first duty is to protect my children. Meanwhile, my boy,
and to beat the
Bo,
shit out
is
of
right
the
beside me, and he's
child.
crying, okay? Because he's afraid that he's going to lose his father, who is, in Canada, his primary caregiver. And I try to comfort him. And after a while, I say to the lifeguards, listen, my boy's crying. This isn't really fair to us. I've already given my confirmation. It's Sunday, okay? The police are probably busy with other things. I'm going to self-report to the police first thing Monday morning. And lifeguards ignored me and said, you have to wait. I continue to wait. And right now I've lost track of time because I'm traumatized. My little boy is crying, and he's traumatized as well. It's also possible that I lose my children. Is crying, and their response is, well, we're not detaining you, we asked you to stay. And at this point I'm like, well, can I leave? And they're like, yes, you can leave. So we left, okay? And then we got home, and the police called, and I explained the situation to the police, and the police were really polite, really understanding, really sympathetic, and said, okay, this makes total sense. You're trying to discipline your child, you have the right to do that, but as procedure, as protocol requires, we have to come and see your children. I says, that makes total sense. So I invited them over to my parents' house where we're staying, and they checked up on my children, and they said, your children are fine. There's nothing wrong with your children. And they left. And that should have been it. But the very next day, my son, Bo, he couldn't eat. and he had high fever. And I tried to put him in bed, but the moment I put him in bed, he would suddenly scream. And I have to rush to him and comfort him. And this was happening for 2 days. And I told him to reassure him that no one's going to tear apart our family. There's no way it's going to be over my dead body before I let someone take him from me and die to make sure my family is safe. And I've decided to file a lawsuit.
That's it? That's everything?
Decided to take civil legal action. I called the police and said, listen, do I have grounds to charge the staff of that public pool with kidnapping or something along those lines? And they had, I mean, they were very polite and they were very understanding, and they had a very long conversation. They did a lot of investigation and told me it doesn't really meet the threshold, criminal threshold, but you can take civil legal action, and I plan to do that.
Of course he does. All right, look, I'm not criticizing him as a parent because I wasn't there. I don't know what he means when he says he spanked his child and then he also said slapped around. Doesn't sound great, I'll tell you that. But I'm not one of these people. A big part of the problem with young people today is that not enough parents do spank their kids when they're out of line. Now, it does sound like that there's a bit of a problem here with the way he treats his middle child versus the way he treats the older and the younger, but not my animals, not my farm. Regardless, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I just thought it was funny because he decided to upload this, snitch on himself, and then say he's gonna sue because he's got a following now because he posts these ridiculous videos about how the U.S. is losing the war in Iran. Nonetheless, it's Sunday. As usual, it's not a particularly busy day in the news or anything, so just got some various things to cover with you guys, kind of hang out for a while. We'll see if Austin decides to drop in with us or not. I sent him a message before we got started. According to the Associated Press, there are state actors that are behind a lot of the disinformation, misinformation that we're seeing online. Not surprising, but let's see what exactly they can tell us about this. It says, as attacks spread after the bombing of Iran by U.S. and Israeli forces, a video circulated widely of crowds peering up at fire, smoke, and debris coming from the top of a high-rise building in Bahrain. Social media users claimed an Iranian attack had hit a skyscraper, but while buildings in Bahrain have been struck by Iranian missiles during the Iran war, this video was not real. It was generated with AI and shared by accounts associated with the Iranian government as part of an effort to amplify its successes, as few as they may be. There are multiple clues that the video is not authentic, yada yada. A deluge of misrepresented or fabricated videos has spread widely online since the Iran war began last week, fueled in part by state-linked propaganda and influence campaigns, particularly around who is winning the war and how many casualties there have been. Yeah, and don't worry, it hasn't gotten past us that the mainstream media has been just as involved in sharing this information. Like that 500 American troops have died. Not true. Like that America bombed the school in Iran. Could be true, still have no idea. It was only the IRGC that reported that it was us. And we still have yet to confirm a single child was in that building. They claim 150 have died. But again, normally they have no problem, as gross as it may be, parading dead bodies of children in front of the news cameras for their propaganda efforts. Yet this time, mysteriously, there wasn't a single body. Even, like, in the videos circulating online right after the bombing where they're digging through the rubble, there was not a single body that was pulled out in any of the videos that I could find. I don't think anyone was there, personally. Whether it was a kid's school or not, we know it was within a military compound. And I don't think anyone was there. But that's just me. But the mainstream media is culpable in this. And it's important that we recognize that. But anyway, the content that's coming from the state actors tends to be a little bit better targeted, said Melanie Smith, Senior Director, Policy Research Center on Information Operations and Institute for Strategic Dialogue. That's a hell of a name. They have a very clear kind of narrative structure, and the videos are just used to support some kind of statement that they want to make about the conflict and about the kind of geopolitical situation writ large. Pro-Iranian social media accounts have adopted a narrative that exaggerates the destruction and death tolls wrought by the country's military, a position supported by what is being reported in Iranian state media. This has led to a large number of AI-generated videos of supposed airstrikes, such as the one of the Bahrainian high-rise on fire. An ongoing Russia-aligned influence operation called Operation Overload, also referred to as Matryoshka Storm 1679, has been posting videos designed to impersonate intelligence agencies and news outlets, undermining people's sense of safety in an effort to sway their behavior. A tactic the network has previously used during election cycles. For example, it shared a warning falsely attributed to Israeli intelligence, telling Israelis in Germany and the US to be cautious when in public or not to go outside at all. Although, frankly, that's probably good advice, as we'll get to the main story later tonight. Pro-Iran social media accounts have adopted a narrative that exaggerates the destruction and death tolls wrought by the country's military, a position supported by what is reported to be in Iranian state media. This has led to a large number of AI-generated videos of supposed airstrikes, such as the one in Bahrainian high-rise on fire, an ongoing Russia-aligned influence operation called Operation Overload, also referred to as Martyshka or Storm 6. Oh, I already read that. Sorry. Sometimes when I'm reading this on the show and the scroll gets screwed up, it's hard to tell. Anyway, misrepresented and fabricated videos have been a key feature of other recent conflicts, such as the Russia-Ukraine and Israel-Hamas wars. But as we saw last night, so we've been seeing on social media for some time, and because I've checked out of the Hamas war long ago, right? It's drug on far too long. I've already criticized Israel for how long it's drug on. But even I was starting to believe that Israel has just flattened all of Gaza, that there's nothing left of the Gaza Strip at all. We checked online last night and took a look, compared it with some of the reports that claim as much as 90% of Gaza has been flattened. You can go on Google Earth and it's like at most 50%. I would estimate probably closer to 35 or 40%. But that's just me. It's not nearly as insane as they've made it sound. And when you look on Google Earth and you look at the density and the layout of the Gaza Strip, the complexity problem does start to paint a picture, especially when you have a million people there that these Hamas actors are hiding amongst. And I'm not making any excuses for Israel. I don't care about Israel. But it does paint a picture of why it is a lot more complex than just flattening buildings. Nonetheless, we all knew that we would end up here eventually, and we are here. Thankfully, the AI videos are still pretty easy to spot. There's usually a lot of mistakes. For example, one of the things that I assume it was the IRGC was trying to flood the zone with over the weekend was these alleged missiles that they had that broke into 80 submunitions on their re-entry into the atmosphere, making it impossible for our missile systems, our counter missile systems, to stop them, because the warhead would break up into 80 submunitions. This is nothing new. These types of munitions have been around for a long time. Russia's been using them in Ukraine. The thing is, there are ICBMs that Russia uses, for example, that break into about 15 significant-sized warheads. But as far as regular missiles and ballistic missiles that break into submunitions, the submunitions are generally pretty tiny. The ones in Russia, for example, they break into little, like, roughly grenade-size explosives, and there's a couple hundred of them get spread over a significantly large area. But the soldiers in Ukraine refer to them as toe busters or something like that, because they very rarely kill you. They just, blow off your foot or something, which obviously is not good, but it's very different from 80 submunitions that can level buildings. Regardless, it was obvious that these videos were fake because all of these submunitions were coming in the dark, and they all had rocket trails on them. But submunitions fall via gravity. They don't have individual rocket trails, otherwise they wouldn't be submunitions. So it was immediately clear that these were fake videos and not real. Thankfully, that's been the case of most things. It's really easy to determine, okay, this isn't legit, or this video might be legit, but we can't necessarily take what's being said at face value. Nonetheless, there's obviously some amount of people, Professor Xing, which we opened with, we've been watching his videos all week of just absolute nonsense CCP propaganda. And there's obviously people that take that seriously. There's a reason why those videos have become so popular. Probably mostly people mocking him, but there is undoubtedly a percentage, maybe 10, maybe 15% that believe these things. And so this is just, part of information warfare in the 21st century, and something that we need to do a better job, I think, of educating Americans on. Our government needs to do a better job of educating Americans on, because you have Americans right now that genuinely believe, because it's being reported in enemy state medias like Russia, China, even Spain, apparently, which as far as I'm concerned, Spain is an enemy at this point, but they're reporting the IRGC's numbers that 500 some American soldiers have been killed. And these people are so blinded by their Trump derangement that they find that more credible than U.S. CENTCOM intelligence. What do you do for these people? It's one thing to think that Trump is lying because you're deranged about Trump. Fine. You think that every person in the U.S. military apparatus is lying? You think that the media is covering for Trump? Even if you think Fox News is, you think MSNBC is? What do you say to these people? Man, I don't know. I'm looking real quick here to see if there's anything else breaking since we've gotten on the air. Apparently, California has mandated $30 per hour for hotel workers. This is going to basically make hotels go out of business in California. California is not worth visiting for, $500 a night for a Motel 6. CNN reports that scientists have found sea levels rising. Maybe we'll take a look at that later. I live on the ocean, guys. The sea levels aren't rising. They're not. We know they're not. Let's see. Unprovoked. Okay, so that's interesting. Let's take a look at that. Give me just 1 second here. So if you remember a little while ago, we covered a story that really, obviously it incensed a lot of us, but it really incensed my co-host, Allan, at First Allan 2 on X, for a period of time, about a stabbing that took place in San Francisco that was unprovoked, and the guy got off because the San Francisco jury let him off because the victim, who had done nothing, they agreed, had done nothing to provoke the attack, called the man the N-word after being stabbed. Apparently, there has been some follow-up since then. It says, unprovoked San Francisco stabbing exposes woke policy that critics say shields suspects. San Francisco Police Department is barred from sharing the mugshot of the suspect who viciously stabbed a pedestrian in a terrifying unprovoked attack because of a woke policy enacted in 2020, which is being ripped by frightened residents. And it should be, because this guy is most likely back on the street, thanks to no cash bail and the fact that they no longer consider priors as relevant, apparently, in leftist cities. Unless, of course, you have no priors, then they'll throw the book at you because you're a law-abiding citizen. The unhinged knifeman was caught on camera creeping up behind the unsuspecting man in Chinatown. This might actually be a different stabbing than I thought. Stabbing him in the back, but San Franciscans are being prohibited from seeing the attacker's face following his arrest. Here is what we have of him from behind. This apparently took place right outside of Sing Travel. There's a free ad for Sing Travel. Telephone number 415-400-5378. Not a sponsor of the show, obviously. Anyway, the SFPD implemented a strict policy in July 2020 that banned the release of most booking photos to avoid perpetuating racial stereotypes. Why would that be? Would it be because most of the people that committed the crime are of a particular race? How do you bring logic back into the conversation of people like this? These people hate you because you are American. They hate this country and they hate you. Doesn't matter if you're Democrat. Doesn't matter if you believe with them. They hate you. And they will do anything to destroy. Sorry, my co-host was messaging me there to let me know that he's busy and he's too good for us. So he's already got plans. Anyway, this policy emerges from compelling research suggesting that the widespread publication of police booking photos in the news and on social media creates an illusionary correlation for the viewers that fosters racial bias and vastly overstates the propensity of black and brown men to engage in criminal behavior. That's according to the San Francisco chief of police at the time, William Scott. Thankfully, he's not the chief of police anymore. You know how much money I happen to know, and I'm not necessarily supposed to have this personal information, but I do. You know how much money a chief of police in San Francisco gets? And actually, this number comes from San Diego, not San Francisco, so it's probably a lot higher. But in retirement, I happen to know that a police chief who only served a few years necessarily brings in well over $400,000 a month. Gee, I wonder why they can't get around to, actually arresting criminals. Let's see here. If I got any other pictures of the guy, because I want to share at least what I can out of it. Gas prices in California also have reached $8.21 a gallon. We have a story on why that is coming up, because it is something that absolutely needs to be fixed. And can be, too. That's the other thing. Oh, look, we can see the victim, but we can't see the face of the attacker. That's about as good as it gets. Whatever it is, he can afford a North Face jacket. Shocking surveillance footage of the daylight attack shows stunned pedestrian clutching his back and staggering before collapsing onto the pavement. When officers arrived, they found the victim suffering from a stab wound, and he was taken to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. Investigators later located a suspect matching the description provided by witnesses near the 600 block of Powell Street, where he was detained without incident and taken into custody. The Post reached out to the San Francisco Police Department for comment, but they said there are no updates to give at this time. Oh, that's Peru. Nobody particularly cares about Peru. No offense, Peru, but not that relevant to us. Reported near U.S. Embassy in Norway. That one is relevant. Apparently, there are no injuries to be reported after an explosion was reported this breaking as of the last 30 minutes near a U.S. Embassy in Norway, according to the local police. Norwegian police reported on Sunday an explosion near the U.S. Embassy in the capital of Oslo, but said there were no casualties. The explosion occurred around 1 a.m. local time. Weird. Adding that they had no information about the blast cause or who was behind it. A loud bang and explosion was reported at the scene. Public broadcaster NRK quoted police incident commander Michael Delmer saying that the blast hit the entrance of the embassy's consular section. At around 1 a.m., we received several reports of an explosion. We arrived shortly afterwards and confirmed that there had been an explosion that hit the U.S. Embassy. There is minor damage. We are not going to comment on anything related to the type of damage, what it is that has exploded, and similar details beyond the fact that there has been an explosion because it is very early in the investigation. The police said that it was in contact with the embassy about the incident and that a large number of resources were on site. The police are in dialogue with the embassy and no injuries have been reported. CBS has reached out to the State Department for comment. Residents near the embassy said they heard a loud blast. A 16-year-old identified only as Edvard told TV2 that he was watching television when he heard it. My mother and I first thought it came from our house, so we looked around a little, but when we saw the flashing lights outside the window and a ton of police, he said, there were police dogs and drones and police with automatic weapons and helicopters in the air. U.S. embassies have been placed on high alert in the Middle East over the U.S. military operations in Iran, and several have faced attacks as Tehran hits back at industrial and diplomatic targets, but police gave no indication of the incident near the embassy in Oslo was connected to the conflict. And it could not be, but it does seem pretty likely. Also in the news today, Southwest passengers got quite the scare when there was an apparent, or alleged anyway, bomb threat on a active flight. SWAT had to come on and remove the passenger. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a second. I want to see if I can find anything else on this Norwegian situation. Let's see. See if we can find anything newer. 14 minutes ago from Reuters. U.S. Embassy in Oslo was hit by an explosion early Sunday, causing minor damage but no injuries. A loud blast was heard near the embassy compound in Oslo at around 1 a.m. The smoke was seen rising from the area, and eyewitnesses told local media. We've determined that the explosion hit the American embassy, adding that the blast occurred at the entry. Search for the perpetrator of the blast was ongoing, while no further explosive devices have been found. Police are in dialogue with the embassy, and there are no reports of any injured persons. That's all we got so far. So we will follow up with that tomorrow and see if there's any, well, I guess on Wednesday, see if there's anything new to report. Let's see, what do we want to turn to here? All of the reports tonight bring us to one very specific bit of information, and that is that Americans in general, and especially conservatives, need to be extremely careful right now. Obviously, we're going to get to our main story here in a few minutes, and that dictates exactly why But no matter who you are, you don't have to be Charlie Kirk anymore. First of all, just being an American is enough. Being in any way identified as a conservative, whether a bumper sticker on your car, your hat, your shirt, anything that could identify you as such, even if incorrectly, you are actively a target right now, apparently. Especially in Democrat stronghold places like New York City. Be careful. And this is exactly why I told people on the show a couple weeks ago that it is important to have a certain level of base equipment. It is both important and it's your responsibility, in my opinion, according to the Constitution and according to the founders. The militia is not the National Guard. It is armed citizens. Breaking right now. Hang on one second here. I got to get it pulled up. My co-host has just informed me, even though he can't make it to the show, that breaking right now, it appears a U.S. F-35 has been shot down over Iran. And we're going to turn to that video right now. Absolutely incredible. So you cannot actually see the plane go down in the video, but it is quite possible, based on the fact he cannot seem to shake him. It appears the Iranian military has upgraded their warfare tactics to, as we can see, what I can only assume is a Chinese-built 10,000 thread count flying carpet. This is very serious stuff. Pray for our men and women overseas right now. Because, yeah. Thank you for that, Austin. I appreciate it. All right. What else we got here? Oh, finishing the point. Oh, man. Apparently, the F-35 is not the only plane to go down. The IRGC has also shot down the NCC-1701D, also known as the Starship Enterprise. We have confirmed, my team has confirmed, this is, in fact, not an AI video. Oh, and apparently, as confirmed from this photo, Worf is a traitor. As you can see there, he is not being carried away. He is, in fact, helping. That, it's a sad day for America and for planet Earth as a whole. So anyway, before I finish my thought from before here, I guess let's get into the main story tonight, which is that conservatives, including, what's his name? Give me a second here. Let me see if I got someone's got to have reported his name. Where is he? Sorry, I got lots of reports on this, but can't remember this kid's name. He's the same one that was attacked by an Antifa mob not too long ago. He's not a particular conservative antagonist that I care for, just because I don't like antagonists. There's really no reason to go into the middle of an Antifa mob. It's not going to do us any good. You know, I know some people believe in confronting them, but I just don't see what we gain from that. In fact, I feel like it only gives them exactly what they're looking for. Jake Lang is the name. But Jake Lang and other random conservatives, as well as police officers, were almost killed tonight by a improvised explosive device thrown by some leftist Antifa types, or at least they were amongst the crowd of the leftist Antifa types in New York City. We'll look into the details here a little bit in a minute. First, here's some video of the incident. So this guy right here is one of the suspects, as we'll see here in a minute. That guy in the camo is the other suspect, obviously. You can see what he's doing right now is attempting to light it. This stupid camera. Throws it at police. And now here come the Antifas to come and try and defend them because they're scum. And that's what scum do. Let's see what other angles we have here. There's actually quite a few angles of this. I grabbed a couple various ones here that are worth looking at. Let's see. This appears to be the same video. Let's see. I think it is. Okay, there you go. It is edited. That is the device right there. It is clearly some sort of jar, duct taped, and you can see a fuse coming out of it that thankfully failed to burn all the way. That's the guy that lit it right there. You see, you can hear him saying, "Nah, he's just cussing at the cops." Now, it's unclear whether he was attempting to hit the police officer specifically or the conservatives. Other angles show more that it was thrown at the conservative counter-protesters. I'll pull those angles here in a second. Here is, I don't know if this is the police chief or who this is, but here's somebody telling us the details. Let me see if I can get the name here. Hang on. NYPD confirm possible bomb was thrown at anti-Islam protesters by multiple Muslim men in New York City. I don't know if they're Muslim or not. I do know they were with the Antifa types, and as you saw in that video, the Antifa types attempted for a brief second to step in and try and stop them from getting arrested until they realized there were too many cops. But
protester
tells you what you need to know.
Identified as Amir Balat, an 18-year-old man, lit and threw an ignited device toward the protest area, landing in the crosswalk of East 87th Street and East End Avenue. Witnesses reported seeing flames and smoke as it traveled through the air before it struck a barrier and extinguished itself.
So right here, the protesters were behind right here, and the police were right here, and then there was another barrier over on this side that was blocking them from the main leftist protest. So it's unclear if he was throwing it at the protesters over here or just the police right here. Either way, it doesn't really matter.
a few feet from police officers. Mr. Balat then ran southbound on East End Avenue toward 86th Street and gets a second device from a man tentatively ID'd as Ibrahim Nick, 19 years old. Mr. Balat lights the device and starts running with it. He then drops the device on the west side of East End Avenue between East 86th and East 87th Streets. Officers immediately secured the area, and they took both men into custody. This was all captured on NYPD Argus camera.
So those are the only details we have at the moment. This, of course, happened just a little bit earlier today.
Identified as a...
I don't even know what we say about this specifically, other than you have to take your own safety seriously, both because of what's going on in Iran right now and because these leftists have become so incredibly unhinged. You know, we saw after Charlie Kirk that they had no problem with that. Saw with the banker, they had no problem with that. Or whatever he was, the insurance guy. And it is incredibly dangerous to be in blue cities right now, where these people literally run rampant and run wild because blue mayors refuse to do anything about it. They've been running wild since 2020. Living in a blue state, I see it all the time. In Seattle, in Olympia, even sometimes in my small town, which I won't mention, obviously, but even sometimes in my small town, during certain events. There was a shop owner, and I can't say what type because it ended up getting national news, and it'll pinpoint me too much. But there was a guy who owned a private store down here, who, when a trans person was elected to a position in the state somewhere, he put up a sign in his business saying, men are men and women are women, or something fairly innocuous. And this person came and confronted him. He said his opinion. He was an old dude. And he didn't say anything that was he certainly didn't say anything that was wrong. And he didn't say anything that was particularly rude. This person came into his store and, tried to confront him. And so that led to some protests and Antifa types showing up. There were threats of violence. Thankfully, because this is a small town, some armed citizens also showed up and stood guard outside of his business, and nothing ended up happening. But there were threats of killing him, burning down his business. It happens all the time. And it's just allowed to happen for whatever reason. God only knows why. You have to be careful and you have to protect yourself. When you're out in public, you have to be paying attention to what's going on around you at all times. And I would also say, I'm not one that believes in hiding your beliefs or anything like that, but it's probably smart to be careful about what you wear in public for a little while. Be careful what stickers you got on your car for a little while. It's a decision you got to make for yourself, but these people are truly deranged, and they have no problem with ends justify the means type thinking. Also, to the people on the conservative side that go out to agitate these groups, just stop. It's not accomplishing anything. Is it fun to see an Antifa guy get beat up every now and then when they get violent and get in over their head? Sure. But you're not accomplishing anything that is helping. You're just, increasing the odds that you get hurt, killed, or jailed. Because as we frequently see, the police in these blue cities will arrest the conservatives for being attacked. In fact, I believe there was a conservative arrested in New York City today prior to this because Antifa attacked them and they had to use pepper spray to defend themselves, and the police arrested him. If I come across that story again while we're on the air, I'll pull it up. But Mondami administration is refusing to call the attempted bombing attack on anti-Islam protesters in New York City an act of terrorism. They won't even call the IED a bomb. They're saying incendiary device packed with nuts and bolts. It was clearly intended to kill. Now, I don't know what that idiot was thinking, because he would have died too, or at least been severely maimed too, but these people aren't smart, and that's part of the problem. Here's another video. So, the device lands right here. You can see people are starting to run. From this point, you see the police are stepping back way too slowly. As word slowly spreads. I'm assuming that's the second device right there, which that person was dumb enough. Look at this. You can see the fuse is still burning, and this idiot goes right up and takes a picture of it. You just can't help some people. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and just, let's get it right. That'll work. Go ahead and just take a screenshot of that real fast. Isn't that lovely? What an absolute moron. Look at these guys. This guy too. You have no idea. So it's really important, guys. If for whatever reason you happen to be in an area and something like this happens, you don't go anywhere near that thing for a minimum of 30 minutes. I get that, like, the curiosity peaks and stuff, but that fuse can go out and relight and go out. Everybody's played with fireworks before. Not played with, but you know what I mean. Everybody has lit fireworks before. This clearly was using a firework type fuse. You can see part of it right there. It can burn inside and not go off for 30 seconds. And then all of a sudden, boom. I don't know why these things work that way. I just know that they can. I've had many fireworks surprise me before. In fact, I got hit in the ass with one when I was like 10 years old. Because I was dumb enough to turn my back to it. It was a mortar that didn't go off. And I was dumb enough to turn my back to it and bent over to grab something else and put my butt right over it. Not my brightest moment. Learned a lesson. It hurt. Anyway, I just wanted to share that little PSA, since apparently most of these idiots here were not bright enough to know better. This was packed, allegedly, with nails and nuts and bolts and things like that. Even if it was a terrible device, as it clearly was because it didn't go off, that still can kill you. What's he say? It sounds like he's saying French almost. Biznigla. And you can see he thinks these leftists are his friends. So usually what leftists will do, and this goes way back to the 70s, when they get arrested, they'll yell out their names to somebody. And the idea being somebody will know that they've been arrested and are put in jail. That appears to be what he's doing here, although I can't tell what he's saying. Biznigla or something like that. I don't know what language it is. It sounds a little bit like French to me, but... That's the kid I was talking about here that we believe was, at least originally believed was targeted with the first device. Absolutely insane. See if I can, So I actually hadn't caught the, the second device before. Here's another angle. You can actually see here a photo of the guy apparently throwing it. It's lit. So you can see Antifa types here. They're over here. And the device gets thrown right here. It's hard to say whether it was aimed towards the cops or aimed towards them.
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
You see, these guys were smart enough to get the hell away.
What the fuck? That was a fucking bomb. What the fuck?
Holy fuck! That was a nail.
Yo, Jay.
Jesus is king, and he made it that that nail bomb didn't go off. Jesus is king. Thank you, Lord God.
I know a lot of people will mock this guy for wearing body armor everywhere he goes, but you can see that there's a reason for it.
Thank you, Jesus.
They just throw another one. Get the goat. Someone's got to get the goat.
They got a goat. The poor goat. Again, they should have left the goat. Nobody should be up there. At least 10-15 minutes, guys. Shit like that is entirely unpredictable. You have no idea how that guy designed it to do whatever. And it's just the danger is not worth any attempted photos you might get or anything else. Oh, okay, so this video is him lighting the second one and he just drops it and runs. So this is some other angles here too. It's a little bit of the same video followed by another angle. So this is him not lighting the original, but this is him lighting the second, and then he just drops it and runs.
Stay back, guys.
If anybody knows what he's saying, I'd love to know. You can hear him saying all a snack bar there.
Come on, guys, get up. Back it up, guys. Guys, get off the street, It's a get brick guy. It's a get brick guy.
He assaulted a police officer. He assaulted a police officer. He didn't throw the cocktail, but he punched the officer in the head.
Yeah, and that is one of them. You can hear the leftists calling the cops terrorists there. Not the guys that literally just threw bombs. The cops. I tell you what, man. These idiot kids, leftists, I mean, have no idea what they're getting themselves into. Aside from the fact that had those devices worked, those idiots would have killed themselves, along with mostly their pals. You know, this is just well beyond what most of these fucking kids are capable of comprehending. The level of, trying to think of the right word, but the level of ignorance and the level of stupidity they're getting themselves into. It's obviously not the word I'm looking for, but anyway, we'll come back to a little more on this story a little later, especially if anything new breaks. But you got to pay attention when you're out in public, and you got to protect yourself. There's no other way to put it. These people are willing to kill you for being an American and nothing more. Pay attention when you're out in public. Watch for suspicious things. Watch what's going on around you, especially when you're in or near crowds. Remember back around 9/11? When we had every public place had on a loop every 15 minutes, you know, to report any suspicious packages or bags left unattended, all of these sorts of things. I remember, you know, living in Washington, taking the ferry boat all the time. Coast Guard used to escort the ferry boat. That message would play every 15 minutes, as well as it would most places that we went that were in public, reminding us to, you know, be vigilant, not to leave bags unattended, yada, yada. Right now, you need to do the same thing. And I think one mistake that our government is making at the moment is not making people aware of that. Not letting people know that they need to be attentive and that they are in danger. Danger might be low for the average person, but it's more than it was before. It's more than zero. You're never going to regret paying more attention, period. Maybe we should talk about what exactly that looks like. This allegedly is the video, and I don't know that it's real. Okay. I don't see any immediate hallmarks that appear to be AI. Matter of fact, let's take a look here. There's some trucks right here. They look legit. This building looks legit. I don't see anything standing out. It looks incorrect. You can actually read the writing on things. Usually on AI, writing will be pretty obscure, especially if it's off to the side like that. It'll be blurred, so you can tell it's writing, but you can't tell what it says. I will say the smoke trail looks a little interesting, but certainly possible. But this is allegedly the Iranian missile landing on the children's school. You can see that it took off from here and then kind of failed to do what it was supposed to. Although that to me looks like an intended hit, if that's the case. And that was its path of changing direction. Instead of going up and over, I don't know. That's a weird, it's a weird trail for a rocket or a missile. Watch it one more time here. Generally, you'd expect a smooth arc, but something so close, you know, maybe it decided to take a weird trail, but you can see it comes down straight. And that would be unusual for a failing rocket. I don't know. Allegedly, that is the one that hit the school. The city of Minab, apparently. Let's do this. One second here. Let me write down a couple pointers real quick, and we're going to talk about them on situational awareness. All right. So I just conversed with AI here for a second to put together 10 tips for me, since I didn't have time before the show, to being more situationally aware in public, in order to be more protected at a time like this. He says, number one, adopt a relaxed alertness mindset. Stay in a condition yellow, aware and observant, rather than condition white, obvious, head down, watching your phone, etc. Notice people, exits, and behaviors without paranoia. This baseline awareness lets you spot anomalies. So let me explain that a little further. Let's say you go into a coffee shop to get your coffee in the morning, right? Don't stand in line on your phone. Instead, stand in line, scan the room, make note of, who's standing where. Take a look at people individually. What are they doing? It helps to look at their hands. Do they have their phone out? Are they paying for their coffee? Are they on their laptop? What specifically are they doing? Are they standing there looking nervous for some reason? You always want to be able to keep an eye on the door if you can. Now, standing in line in a coffee shop, you're not necessarily going to be able to do that. But rather than standing in line facing forward with your back to the door, you can kind of stand at a diagonal so that you can at least see the door, if not out of your peripherals, a little more easily with just a little bit of a head turn. And then if you're going to sit down, always sit down with your back towards the wall or towards the back of the store at the very least, and watching the front door, and know where the exits are. And it's important to remember, in an emergency, the public exits are not the only exits. Any window, whether you have to break it or not, that's an exit. The back door, any way that you can get out of the building is an acceptable exit in an emergency. In the event that you're in a grocery store, for example, you're in a Walmart, and a mass shooter situation happens, There are multiple exits in a Walmart, but the average person is only going to think about running towards the front 2 exits. Unfortunately, smart criminals are going to be aware of that. In reality, there are multiple fire exits. There should be one on every wall of the building. So, should be 4 walls, right? You got your main 2 exits up front. Both of the sides are at least going to have a fire exit. The back should have a fire exit as well. You have rear doors, generally in a Walmart, 2 of them. That's average for a lot of stores. That go to the rear loading bays and all of that. Those would be exits. Any way that you can get out of the building in an actual emergency is acceptable. Number 2, scan your environment regularly. Use the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. Every few minutes, glance around. Who's nearby? What are they doing? Where are the nearest exits, cover, or escape routes? In crowded places like subways, malls, or events, do a quick 360 check. This is something that I teach my son all the time when we go on walks, especially at night. We have a particular issue where I'm at with coyotes. Even though we're in town, because somebody keeps feeding stray cats, it brings the coyotes into town. And we'll often take the dog out for a walk because, it gets nighttime early this time of year, although we're getting into the lighter days. But regardless, this particular trail that we walk, it's a nice open field, which is always important. You want to try and stay away from, especially if you have to walk at night, you want to try and stay away from alleys, obviously, or like wooded areas. Open areas where you can see people coming from all directions are some of the safest places you can be. But walking through this trail, I remind him constantly, you gotta, every now and then, every 10 steps or so, just take a quick look behind you, because you tend to get focused walking forward and people can sneak up on you and you have no idea. So you have to make a habit of actually looking behind you every so often. You can do this when you're in public. Obviously, you don't want to look like a paranoid loon. You can do this in lots of ways. You don't have to physically turn around. You can use your phone, and just with the screen off, use the reflective surface, or with the front-facing camera. You can also use reflective surfaces around you, car windows, things like that. See if anyone is directly behind you, following you, or just see what's going on. Store windows, mirrors, anything that is a reflective surface. Just take a quick look as you're walking by and get a view of that angle that you can't usually see. Number 3, know your exits and escape routes. Upon entering any public space, and this goes to what we were just talking about, train station, concert, restaurant, identify at least 2 ways out beside the main entrance. Note obstacles, bottlenecks, potential cover. And I know this sounds like a lot of stuff, but all of these things start to build over time. So if you just remember, okay, I'm going into a building that only has exits in the front. What are other ways I can get out of here? And you just think, okay, I know there's a fire exit over there. I know there's a fire exit over there. And then the next time you go in to that Walmart or grocery store or whatever, you already know there's a fire exit over here and a fire exit over here. So now, where's another exit? Or if I need to go to this one, what are the things that stand in the way of me doing that? What are the potential things that stand in the way? And so it builds every time, because as a civilian, you're generally going to the same places all the time. And so you're able to build that awareness over time. And if you're in a new place, you might not be able to gather all that information, but just gathering some information, just not having your head in your damn phone, makes all the difference in the world in staying alive from terrorist and criminal attacks. Number 4, trust your instincts. If something feels off, someone lingering oddly, heavy clothing in warm weather, unattended bag, or nervous behavior, don't ignore it. Your subconscious often picks up on subtle cues. Move away or alert authorities. If you feel like you're being paranoid, just leave. If you don't think that there's a specific reason to be concerned. But there's nothing wrong if you have a reason to be concerned, like an unattended bag, in a place that there should not be an unattended bag, and you don't see anyone around that it belongs to, like, say, on a sidewalk or on a bus, and there's clearly nobody that goes with this or whatever, there's nothing wrong with bringing that up with the bus driver or with a police officer or whoever is nearby and just saying, hey, this looks odd. You know, I don't know that it's anything, but it stood out to me. Number 5, limit distractions. Reduce phone or headphone use in crowded areas. I get it. I like wearing my headphones all the time too, but I make sure to use earbuds and only keep one in so that I'm at least always paying attention to what's going on around me. Of course, now they have the type that allow environment pass-through, so you can actually listen, like these have environment pass-through or whatever. If I was using them in their wireless mode, I could turn it on so that I could hear what's going on outside on top of what I'm doing. It's okay. It's better than not at all. And especially if you combine that with paying attention visually, but it's obviously best to be able to hear. Being immersed in a screen kills your awareness. If you must use your phone, stop and position yourself with your back to a wall so that you can see the room. Just be aware of where you're stopping to use it, right? If you're standing on a subway platform waiting for a subway, just wait till you get on the subway and sit down before you pull out your phone. Watch for pre-attack indicators. Look for behaviors like testing security, rehearsing movements, unusual sweating or nervousness, bulky clothing, backpacks in odd contexts, or groups acting in coordination. Report suspicious activity to police or security immediately. Number 7, position yourself strategically. When possible, choose seats or spots with good visibility and quick access to exits. Remember, on a subway or a bus, every single one of those windows pops out. Try and sit by a window. Try and sit away from a door, by a window if you need to. Or close to a door, by a window, whatever works. But, there's no good place to be on a bus or a subway. The best you can do is close to an exit. If you can, if there's an exit on the back of the subway car or the bus, then great. But let's see. Number 8, have a simple personal plan. Decide in advance. If I hear gunshots, explosions, screams, my first action is run. If a safe path exists, then hide, barricade if needed. Fight only as a last resort. Practice mentally, visually responses so you're not frozen in the moment. When panic sets in, people do a lot of crazy things. And no matter how well you think you might handle a situation, even well-trained people sometimes freeze. Because when adrenaline happens, you instantly go into hyper-awareness. And that, it hits people all differently. And unless it's happened to you many times, the only way to get used to it, to be able to use that, is for it to happen many times. Obviously not true for most civilians and not ideal either. But the best thing that you can do is recognize when it is happening. And it might take you a minute because your heart starts pounding, it starts getting hard to breathe. You might realize if you're trying to speak that you're having to take deep breaths in between every word because you're out of breath even though you haven't moved yet. If you can recognize those signs that you are not panicking, but your adrenaline is flowing, or maybe panicking depending on, how you are as a person, then you can tell yourself, okay, I'm scared, or I'm full of adrenaline right now, or whatever. I need to do X. Generally, for a civilian, it's going to be just get off the X, is what they say, meaning get out of that situation, whatever it is. And try to, this is why having that plan ahead of time is extremely important, because your thought process is going to be all screwed up. And so if you wait until you hear gunshots to go, okay, where are the exits? You're just going to run straight for the exit that you know exists. If you didn't think it out beforehand and go, okay, I know there's one there, I know there's one there, and then the one I came in at the front of the store. You're just going to go for the one at the front of the store because that's what your brain knows to do. That's why it's important that you do these things all the time while you're in public. And look, this is not, you don't need to be paranoid everywhere you go. You need to consider, where am I going and what is the potential risk or the plausible risk in where I'm going, and that can determine how aware you need to be. If I'm going to the grocery store in a small town in the middle of nowhere, don't need to be that aware. I should pay a little bit of attention in case somebody tries to rob the store, but I can be a little more relaxed than if I'm in downtown New York or downtown Seattle or downtown Los Angeles going to a concert, for example. It's all about thinking ahead and just thinking these things out. It doesn't take long. It doesn't take much effort. But it makes all the difference if something were to happen. As you saw in that video, or in those videos, of those terrorists throwing those two, whatever they were, devices, a lot of people ran towards them. I took a screenshot of the lady that went up and immediately took a picture while it was still burning. But a lot of people ran towards them, not even realizing that it was there. They just saw other people running and started panicking. Before you start running, sometimes it's best to stop and look around and see, okay, what is everybody running for? What is going on here? We know that, where was it? In Mexico, when they killed El Mencho the other day. There was a panic at the airport, and everybody in the airport started running, even though there was actually nothing that happened at that airport. At least nothing that warranted running. Sometimes it's best to take a second and assess. Well, in fact, it's pretty much always best. Take a second and assess. Unless you see something immediately that you know I need to get away from, then fine. But the other thing in that situation, for a lot of them, would have been, especially if you saw the device, would have been to take cover behind some of those concrete walls rather than trying to run. You can't outrun a gun, and you can't outrun an explosion if you're close to it. You're far better off getting behind solid cover that's going to protect you. Maybe getting a few steps away and then doing it. But had those devices gone off, there would have been a lot of people maimed or killed. There was a lot of people that were within the radius of danger there. Number 9, stay tuned to your surroundings during routines. That's the other thing. Try and vary your routine as much as possible. It's not so easy for the average person on the average day. You got to go pick up your kid every day at 3 o'clock. You got to go to work every morning at 8 o'clock, whatever it is. But just try not to go exactly the same way every time. Try to change it up a little bit. If you leave every day at 7:30, vary that to leaving between 7:20 and 7:35 and not necessarily a specific minute. Small variations like that can make all the difference. Public transit, walking streets, or events are prime times for complacency. Vary your routes and time slightly to avoid predictability. Note changes in normal patterns. Varying your route also helps with that complacency. By taking a route you're less familiar with, you're instinctively going to be more aware of what's going on around you. If you're always, there's a stat, and it's been contradicted a little bit, but I still think that it's overwhelmingly true, that the vast majority of car accidents happen within a mile of home. And the reason for that is the closer people get to home, and they're almost always on their way home, if they're the one that caused the accident, the closer people get to home, the less they're paying attention. The more they're starting to think about, okay, what do I need when I get home? I need to take the groceries inside, or I need to feed the dog, or I'm going to start dinner, or whatever it is. You start doing other things besides paying attention to driving. You're starting to check out of driving and into something else before you get out of the car. You're starting to check your phone. Okay, have I missed any calls? Have I done whatever? Because you drive this, this last road to the house all the time, and you just kind of autopilot takes over. It's the same thing with walking or anything else too. The more familiar you are, the less you're going to pay attention automatically. And so if you can make yourself less familiar by varying your route or whatever, it's going to help with that. And then the only other thing you can do is be aware of the fact that you're going to do that you're going to go into autopilot when you get close to familiar places, and try and force yourself not to. But I'll tell you, it's hard. Number 10, report without hesitation. If you see something truly concerning, tell law enforcement venue staff right away. Better a false alarm than a missed warning. Yeah, just don't make a panic for no reason. If you see something suspicious, but you don't have a particular reason, like it's not, on fire emitting smoke, then you can go and have a quiet conversation with somebody that is appropriate to go and check it out or whatever. You don't need to, see a backpack alone on a street and yell, "Bomb!" and cause a panic for no reason. So anyway, that's 10 ways to stay more situationally aware, and you need to do so because civilians are on the table right now, apparently. American civilians are on the table right now, both with leftists and Muslims, apparently. Muslim terrorists. I'm not saying all Muslims. I'm saying the ones that subscribe to the ideology, whatever that might be, that dictates that killing non-believers is acceptable. Not only acceptable, but desired. All right. Let's see what else we have here. This is an interesting video I got on Cash for Clunkers, and it's not, so it's obviously an AI video. It's obviously a little bit of a clickbait thing, but there is some truth to it, and it's worth noting. Although there is one part of this I want to check real fast. Hang on 1 second. Almost there. All right. Now that is interesting. Okay. Here's the video.
In the summer of 2009, the federal government launched Cash for Clunkers. Turn in your old car, get up to $4,500 toward a new fuel-efficient one, help the environment, boost the economy. Everyone wins. Real mechanics knew better. What Cash for Clunkers actually did was execute a calculated, government-mandated destruction of the most reliable analog vehicles.
I want to point out that every mechanic I have ever known has owned one of these box Chevys. And thankfully, a lot of them still exist, but a lot of them were lost to Cash for Clunkers, and it kills me that somebody destroyed one of these Caprices.
Ever built in America.
I don't know why I have an
Nearly
affinity for those
700,000
Caprices,
cars and
as
trucks
ugly as
were
they are.
deliberately killed, not parted
Look
out.
at that. Look at that. Stock Solo Cup decals. How awesome is that?
Not donated, destroyed on purpose by law before they were crushed. And the used car market that working Americans had depended on for generations was never the same
And that's
again.
the key right there.
This is
we'll
the
talk about it
forensic
after.
audit of how they did it, what they killed, what replaced it, and what you need to know before the next phase of this trap locks into place in 2026.
We'll talk about that too.
Number 1, the liquid glass execution. To qualify for the rebate, dealerships were legally required to destroy the engine of every trade-in before it left the lot. They could not resell it. They could not part it out. They had to kill it. The method was sodium silicate solution, liquid glass. Mechanics drained the engine oil from each qualifying vehicle and replaced it with sodium silicate. Then they started the engine and let it run. The sodium silicate heated and crystallized inside the block. Metal surfaces that were supposed to glide began grinding. Within minutes, the pistons seized. The crankshaft stopped. The engine welded itself into a useless mass of metal that would never turn again. Footage from dealerships that summer shows mechanics standing over hoods, watching engines smoke and knock and die.
Yep.
Some of them looked like they were attending a funeral. In a sense, they were. Number 2, eradicating the forever engines. The trade-ins that rolled into dealerships that summer were not junk. They included some of the most indestructible engines American manufacturing ever produced. The Jeep 4.0-liter inline six-cylinder, a cast-iron block with a simple design, engineered so far beyond its tolerances that Cherokee owners routinely drove past 300,000 miles and kept going. Parts were everywhere. A teenager with basic mechanical knowledge could rebuild one on a weekend. The GM 3800 V6, installed in Buicks and Pontiacs through the 1990s and into the 2000s.
And that was based off the Chevy 350, the most reliable and actually most popular engines ever made. It was in basically every V8 Chevy from 19, besides larger blocks like 454, but any small block Chevy, car or truck from like 1950 something to 2001, I think is where they switched to the Vortec, was a Chevy 350. The 3800, that was a Chevy 350 with the back 2 cylinders cut off. And that V6 was considered to be basically just as reliable. They went into S10s and things like that, as well as a lot of Buicks and larger body cars.
Consumer Reports called it one of the most.
Of course, Hondas and stuff of this era were extremely reliable too.
Ranchers talked about a good working horse. They just did not quit. Both of them shared one thing the auto industry in 2009 desperately needed to eliminate. They were repairable by ordinary people. No proprietary software, no dealer visit required. Parts at any auto parts store. You cannot sell a working class family a new $40,000 SUV on a 7-year loan.
That's not
if their
entirely
1998 Jeep Cherokee refuses to die. The forever engines had to go, so they went. Number 3, the computer on wheels trap. Once the analog cars were crushed, the replacement vehicles waiting at those same dealerships were built on a completely different philosophy. Starting around 2010, the industry began replacing mechanical controls with software interfaces. The tactile knobs and dials that let
See, that's only part of it,
climate
though.
control
A lot of
and
people
radio
point to the
without
electronics,
looking
but that's
away
only
from
a
the road
fraction.
began disappearing. In their place came touchscreen displays running proprietary software. A 2002 Silverado with a broken blower motor is a $30 part and an afternoon. A 2019 Ram 1500 with a failed Uconnect screen is a dealer visit, a proprietary replacement unit, a software flash.
All right. So there is some BS to that video, but some truth. In 2007, the engines were in fact required to be destroyed so that the cars could not be resold before they were sent to scrap on the Cash for Clunkers trade-in. And this was, so if you remember, the government used our tax dollars to bail out these companies. In exchange, they made the companies do several things. Part of it was about recouping the money, but part of it was about getting the climate stuff passed and shoved through. So we know back in the 70s with the Clean Air Act and stuff that introduced emissions controls to American vehicles. It made later 70s American cars after the muscle car era just take a total plunge. So it's why a 1971 454 big block Chevelle made 350 horsepower, but a 1975 Chevelle with a big block made 190 horsepower because of emissions. Now, by the end of the 90s, they had kind of worked those emission rules out. They had much more reliable cars coming through. Some of the best cars ever made were made in the 90s, which is kind of surprising. Some of the worst ones, too. But as we saw the Jeep 4-liter, the 4.3, and the 350, which is the 5.7 that I was talking about. Trying to think of what else. There's a few others. I don't know them as well as some car guys do, but there's several motors out of this time that are rock solid. The 4-liter from Ford, 4-liter V6, that was in the Explorers, for example, and I think the Ranger, I think any of the V6 Rangers had the same 4-liter. That was rock solid, 400, 500,000 miles. I've actually owned two of those Explorers when I was younger, both of which were well over a couple 100,000 miles, no issues. And it's not that today's cars are less reliable per se, although so far not so great. But Obama introduced a bunch of new emissions, including limiting the CO2 with the endangerment finding, which was just reversed by Donald Trump. Now, whether that'll stand will depend on these liberal-ass courts. But this was about making cars more expensive and shifting Americans away from cars. You see, progressives have this idea that you can't control independent people because you can't. Americans are too independent. And they have this idea that we would all be much happier in 15-minute cities if only they could force us to live in these 15-minute cities. We've all seen the WEF, you'll own nothing and be happy. They believe that they can make you do these things and be happy, but they know they have to force it. And that's why California has a ridiculous emissions law coming down. He said 2026. I believe it's been pushed to 2030. That still hasn't been reversed. The EV mandate that Biden pushed through, that has been reversed. But California has this mandate coming down for 2030 that requires something like 70% of all vehicles sold to be EVs or something like that. It's something absolutely stupid. But unfortunately, basically every leftist state in the union signed on to it because apparently when California passes a law, we all have to adhere to it for some reason. It's also true that, yes, the auto manufacturers realized that more software and proprietary engineering, the more difficult it would be for you to work on your own car, sure. There are advantages that come from it too, but obviously it's advantageous to them if you have to take it to if you have to take your Ford to a Ford dealer or your Dodge to a Dodge dealer to get it fixed. Now they own the repairs and the sales. Whereas before they owned the sales, but really repairs were mostly done by third-party mechanics. There aren't nearly as many third-party mechanics as there used to be. And that's because in order to be a third-party mechanic today, you now have to get certified by every single car manufacturer out there in order to use their proprietary software and engineering stuff. It's expensive and time-consuming and very hard to live with. And all of this is to make cars more expensive, to make you less likely to want to get one. That's really all it is. They don't want people driving cars. That's why they put bike lanes everywhere, even though like 5 people in the whole city use them. That's why they, spend trillions of dollars on these mass transit projects that nobody ever uses and they never get finished. It's just the car that is ready to go wherever you want, whenever you want, the moment you walk outside. It's the ultimate in individual transportation. Americans have always prided ourselves on our freedom and our individualism, our ability to do whatever the hell we want to do, as long as it doesn't interfere with somebody else. They don't like that. They want us to work as a collective. They believe that they can force that. And they do it via shit like this, via shit like the endangerment finding that determines that CO2, a naturally existing component in the atmosphere, a gas that is every bit as necessary for life on Earth as oxygen is a pollutant. And that way, because CO2 is listed as a pollutant via the endangerment finding, and it's produced by virtually anything, a fire, a wood fire produces CO2, your car engine produces CO2, you produce CO2. Now they can limit. Now they can regulate. Because the pollutant, it all intertwines. And look, maybe I'm wrong about why they're doing it. It's entirely possible. It doesn't really matter, though, because they are doing it. And no matter what benevolent reason they think, that's not how our system of government is supposed to work. We as individuals are supposed to be able to choose for ourselves. If I want to choose a gas-guzzling piece of shit, that's my choice. If I want to choose a dangerous pickup truck with no airbags, rolled down windows, and 3,000 horsepower, that's my choice. I'm the one that is putting myself at risk by buying a car with no airbags. I'm the one that is putting myself at risk by not wearing a seatbelt. And don't give me this, oh, you could wreck and fly out of the car and hit somebody else. You know how often that's happened? Almost never. People used to fly out of the car all the time for not wearing their seatbelts, in particularly less safe vehicles, too. But you know how often they flew into somebody else and made them crash? Almost never. Leftists always like to find the fringe case that gives them the excuse, and then they just hammer that fringe case home over and over and over in order to take away something that is a right and turn it into a privilege. If you're lucky, it's a privilege that you can buy an expensive permit for to use, like, say, hunting. If you're unlucky, then it's a privilege only they get to use, like, say, automatic weapons. It was entirely your right to own automatic weapons until 1986. Now, only they get to. I understand that freedom is scary to a lot of people, but that's what they were hoping for. By taking that freedom away and promising you safety, we're not any safer today. Not significantly, and not because they did something like take away automatic weapons. Airbags weren't created because the government mandated it. Airbags were created because people wanted safer cars. But it also makes cars far more expensive. Everyone talks about, oh, China can make these BYD EVs for $20,000 or whatever it is in China. Yeah. Because in China, there's no rules. They can make the car however they want to. That same BYD, to meet American regulations, costs the same as a Tesla. In fact, it's about $4,000 more. Know that? Leftists don't seem to be able to recognize, meaning the voters themselves, they don't seem to recognize that all of these regulations they demand are why shit is so expensive. Whether you like it or not, this country has something that the rest don't, which is the freedom of choice. It is the freedom to choose dangerous things if we want to. And as long as we're not putting other people in danger with those dangerous choices, it is perfectly our right to put ourselves in danger. Well, this isn't the 1920s anymore. We can't just let people buy a gun with nothing but their ID. Why not? Criminals have them already anyway. The fact is, the Second Amendment says your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That means hindered in any way. That means you should not have to go to the government and ask for permission. What do I know? What do I know? All right. Let's take a look at this kid. This kid makes a compelling argument. I played him recently on the show. Makes a compelling argument, but he's wrong. He gets it right up until the end, and then you go, oh, come on. Like, you were this close. Before we do that, though, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a minute. get back into it, guys. Looks like we have some breaking footage coming out of the Middle East again here. Get you switched over. There we go. It looks like we saw earlier an American F-35 being taken down by a new type of fighter jet being employed by Iran. And it looks like we are getting more footage of this new weapon being employed on the battlefield. Scary stuff. As you can see, things are getting very tense there in the Middle East. All right. Back to this video we were going to play before the break, where this kid, like I said, he's got a very interesting take, and he seems pretty spot on until he gets to the end. See what he has to say.
Unfortunately, I am spiraling, and I have put on my tinfoil hat, and I am going to present a hypothesis.
Unfortunately, he is.
I do not think that this is about the Epstein files. Hear me out before you get angry.
Gee, you don't think so? It really drives me nuts how the leftists all of a sudden have decided, oh, everything is about the Epstein files. Not a word. Back in 2014, when this started, under Obama, not a word. For 2 years. Not a word under Donald Trump the first time. Not a word under Joe Biden. Trump gets into office, tries to release the documents, and then Pam Bondi, who nobody understands why isn't fired yet, says the most stupid thing in the world. They're on my desk, even though they weren't. Nonetheless, still releases more documents than anybody else has, and is trying to release them all without harming any of the victims and such. And all of a sudden, you know, this is the Epstein regime. We should have never released them. It just, Americans aren't prepared to handle competent, rational thought. Anyway.
On January 3rd, 2026, when we invaded Venezuela and captured Maduro, we took temporary control of Venezuela's oil exports and commerce. Venezuela has the largest oil reserve in the world. At first, this did not make complete sense because we cannot necessarily use Venezuela's oils because of the crudeness of it. But technically, we do control their oil sales right now.
Exactly
the largest beneficiaries of Venezuelan oil is China, Russia, and Cuba. The other country that China currently gets a majority of their oil reserves from is Iran. Besides Iranian leadership under this current regime, we are...
He is right there. He has almost put it together, what this is actually about. Now let's see if he takes it all the way.
Currently targeting Iranian naval bases. Why? Because Iranian naval bases are currently attempting to defend the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a key shipping lane to be able to get oil to China. China knew that this was going to happen because they have been stockpiling oil reserves since January when the U.S. invaded Venezuela. They currently have enough oil to last them for approximately 100 days. But what...
That is nothing. First of all, no, they don't. Second of all, that is nothing. That's not even a third of a year. Keep going. You're almost there.
100 days winds down. Their manufacturing completely stalls. But that's not where this stops. Look at the Q3, Q4 GDP report from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is released by this administration. On page 2 of both reports, you will see that the Q3, Q4 GDP is currently being propped up by increased defense spending. Now, who is currently the biggest beneficiary of U.S. production of defense systems? It is not Israel. It is Saudi Arabia. Which country is currently trying to backfill China's oil reserve depletion? Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is currently the biggest beneficiary of us invading Venezuela and...
You were so close to figuring it out.
capturing Maduro and also us invading Iran. Our biggest customer of the export that is currently propping up our economy is simultaneously
Saudi Arabia is not our biggest export. We are the biggest buyer of our defense systems right now.
the only country that is currently supplying China with oil. Now, why is the U.S. currently engaging
I don't know if he knows this. Well,
in
I'll check.
hypocrisy
Hang
by
on.
propping up Saudi Arabia?
let him
$1 billion
explain why he
in
believes.
2 Trump towers in Jeddah and
Oh, okay. The war in Venezuela, the war in Iran, the attempt to take down Cuba. This is all about Donald Trump building 2 Trump towers in Saudi Arabia, which he was already doing, mind you. We don't need to hear the rest because it's nonsense. But I just, you were so close to figuring out what this really is all about. And yes, I'll explain what it is here in a second. I already have in previous episodes, but I will do it again. But he was this close. But because of that simple little disease called TDS, it must be about Trump somehow. And yes, he started a war in Iran so that he could build Trump Tower Saudi Arabia, even though the company was already doing that. The Trump organization, which Trump has no control over right now, was already doing that. They've been building Trump Tower Saudi Arabia for years. So, no idea why they would need to invade Iran. I guess to make the Saudis happy, to let them build Trump Tower in Saudi Arabia, except Saudi Arabia has already allowed them to build Trump Tower in Saudi Arabia. They are happy to have anybody invest in Saudi Arabia. I don't understand. I do, because Trump has to be at the center of everything, and it has to be nefarious. Otherwise, it can't possibly be true. That's the case with leftists. If Trump isn't at the center of it, and he's not shadily profiting from it somehow, then it can't be true. That's what dictates their mindset right now. In reality, he was right there. This is about suppressing China's ability to wage war. This is about undermining Russia and China. Rumor is Russia has offered $12 trillion in trade deals over the next 20 years or whatever it is in order to bring about peace and for us to remove our sanctions on them. And I believe to end the war in Ukraine. Because I doubt, Trump would ever agree if it didn't involve ending the war in Ukraine. That's the goal. Trump wants to make deals that are beneficial to America. He's very upfront about what he wants. It's not that hard, and it's not a big conspiracy. We took out Maduro. We're taking out Iran in order to crush Cuba, who is also dying right now because of no supplemental oil from Venezuela. To crush China, screw their ability to wage war against Taiwan and against us, and to bring Russia back to the negotiating table. Now, Russia has its own oil. Russia's doing fine as far as that goes. But the other thing that we've done is entirely undermine BRICS in the fact that we've proven China and Russia will do nothing to back up their allies. The only thing that Iran is getting from Russia and China right now is some spare parts and some sloppy intel. That's it. Ukraine's not even our ally, and we've funded their entire war effort. Iran is the most strategically important ally of both Russia and China right now. And the only thing they'll do for them is throw them some spare parts and a little bit of intel. Intel that's utterly useless anyway to Iran because it doesn't matter that they know where our ships are. They can't hit them. I wanted to check too because I'm pretty sure his whole thing here is flawed because, okay, I guess Saudi Arabia can go around the backside here. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure they can only move oil through the Strait of Hormuz as well, but apparently they can go down here. It's a much farther distance, but apparently they can do that. Now, I don't know if they do. If all their ports are set up over here and they're not actually prepared to ship anything out of here, then it doesn't matter that they can. But I don't know. All right, the other thing I wanted to check was how shipping is doing in the strait right now. We saw yesterday that ships were still anchored, waiting to go through the strait, unable to. I want to see if that's changed at all. Oh, shoot. Wrong thing. I forget the name of the website, so I got to look at my history real quick. Which, thankfully, I was smart enough not to do on screen this time. All right. There it is. Marinetraffic.com. That's right. All right. So, where are we? Right here. Too far. So, any of the arrows are ships that are underway. Any of the dots are ships that are anchored. As we can see, there's still a massive cluster right here, most of which are at anchor. The ones that are underway, that could be false reading based on them drifting or whatever. They could just be moving a little bit. But as we can see, it does not look like much of anything is going through. There's one ship right here in the center. Not sure what they're doing. They're currently going 10 knots, though. This stretch right here is exactly 60 miles from smallest side to smallest side. I'm not really sure that the boats are any safer right here than just going through here, but, and you can see there's another little pile of ships over here. Well, that's interesting. And they do appear to be oil ships, primarily. So, looks like most ships are still hanging out, waiting for a go. Another little cluster over here. Yep, pretty much all oil ships. Probably some container ships as well. Yep, there you go. So everything is still kind of stationary. I don't imagine it'll be much longer before the U.S. can secure the Strait of Hormuz. As we've seen, Iran, matter of fact, let me get the exact numbers here from Grok. A second here. According to what is and drone fired. Iran has drastically cut down on the amount of munitions that they have to fire, and we can see that in these reports. Oh, maybe it's not from CENTCOM. Hang on. Hang on one second here. Apparently it wasn't CENTCOM. I thought it was. According to CENTCOM, though, recent statements from CENTCOM, particularly from Commander Admiral Brad Cooper in briefings around March 5th during the ongoing conflict, Epic Fury, Iran has significantly reduced its launches of ballistic missiles and drones compared to the initial days. They haven't provided daily averages. Ballistic missile attack launchers have decreased 90% since day one. Some have cited 86%, with a recent 23% drop just in the last 24 hours. Drone attacks launches down 83%, some citing 73%. Iran has launched over 500 ballistic and cruise missiles and over 2,000 drones since the start of the engagement. Some reports align with totals exceeding 2,500 combined missiles and drones. So they're pretty much out. No, I apologize. If that's 500 ballistic missiles and cruise, they probably, at best, have 1,000 left. At best. 2,000 drones, it's hard to say. They claim they had 80,000 drones. Nobody really believes that, though. One thing's for sure, they're not making any more. And we have no idea how many we've blown up on the ground. We know it's been significant. Conflict appears to start around February 28th. Early days, so much higher volumes, yada yada. Alright, so the report you're referring to is likely wide shared breakdown, often visualized tower stack chart in OSINT circles. Filing day-by-day tallies of Iran ballistic missile drone launches since the conflict began, February 28th. These figures come from aggregated OSINT sources, including IDF spokesperson statements, U.S. defense analysis, Emirati Kuwaiti Defense Ministry data on intercepts, and open-source tracking. No official CENTCOM release provides an exact daily itemized list, besides 90% down. However, the circulating tallies align closely with the reported trends. Massive initial barrages, tapering sharply due to degraded launches from U.S. launchers from U.S.-Israeli strikes. Here's the most common cited day-by-day tally. Day 1, 350, 175, 120, 50, 40, 32, 28, 15 today. That's ballistic missile launches. Drones starts at 294. Day 2 is the peak at 541, heavy swarms on Gulf targets. Day 3, 200. Day 4, 85, 45, 38, 30, down to 12 today. According to these tallies, 810 missiles have been fired, which would be damn near what was left of their stockpile, especially if you include what we've struck. And 1,245 drones. We don't really know, but the estimates are they probably had roughly as many drones as they did missiles. That really says a lot, too. When you see that they've fired approximately between 500 and 800 missiles and, what did CENTCOM estimate? 2,000 drones, between 1,200 and 2,000 drones, they've successfully hit about 10 military targets. It's, of course, led to the death of 6 soldiers, U.S. soldiers. And they've taken out 2 THAAD radar systems. They took out a stationary radar and then a stationary, technically Saudi early detection radar, but it was our, joint effort with Saudi Arabia. And that's about it. About it. They've done almost no counter damage. And for anybody that's unaware, they might think, well, that's pretty bad. Well, sure, it's bad. But we expected Iran to be a far more formidable opponent than it's turned out to be. You heard Donald Trump in the first couple days saying it's going way better than we expected. These missiles were no joke. A lot of them were considerably more accurate, not more accurate, but considerably accurate. Not quite American standard, but pretty good. They also carried significant payloads. And these drones, while not really a threat by themselves, we expected that they had massive swarms. And that's the problem with them, is they can overload systems that are able to stop them. F-35s can shoot them down with their cannons, but we only have so many F-35s to go after drones. You send 500 at a target, you're probably going to get a few through. we expected to take much heavier damage. We didn't necessarily expect any higher troop losses, and thankfully, troop losses have been low. Rest in peace to the 6 soldiers who did lose their lives. Civilian casualties have been pretty low too, but unfortunately, some of the Middle East states have taken unfortunate civilian casualties because Iran has just lashed out in anger. Israel, of course, has taken a few lashes as well. A few have gotten through the Iron Dome. That said, we expected this to be much worse. We expected them, we expected ships to be dodging missiles. We expected bases to being hit a lot more. It's hard to put exact numbers on things. But I can tell you that looking at the stockpile of 3,000 accurate ballistic missiles with significant payloads and believed to be in the tens of thousands of these drones, it's incredible what our boys have been able to do with such little response. Is it possible that Iran is lying in wait until we deplete, a lot of our Patriot and THAAD systems, and then they're going to try and, spike a bunch up? Maybe, but it's unlikely. Remember, every day that they wait, more of their stockpiles we find. We don't do things like this without having intel beforehand. Iran has a lot of people that don't like the regime, and that means a lot of people happy to provide intel to us. Just like we expected in Venezuela, well, we didn't necessarily expect, but we expected that the Russian radar systems, the Chinese anti-missile systems, the man-pads, we expected those to have some sort of effect on our equipment. We knew we could jam to a certain degree. We knew that we had some capability. Like I said, in the beginning of the Ukraine war, we were able to capture one of Russia's newest radar jamming components. It was like a container. It was a stationary radar component, and Ukraine captured it when Russia first made their advance and had to retreat back a bit. They had to leave it behind and weren't able to destroy it. That was huge for us. But, we still expected that these systems were going to have some sort of effect, that at the very least, our planes were going to have to dodge some missiles, even if they didn't get shot down. We fly with complete impunity over these systems. In fact, our 40-year-old bombers, our B-2s, were able to fly through the countries, including friendly countries, without being spotted by anybody for 48 hours. They took off from Michigan or wherever the hell it was, Kansas, I don't remember which state it was, flew all the way across the ocean, all the way across Africa, into the Middle East, across all those countries with all different types of radars and tracking equipment, refueled midair probably a dozen times, and nobody spotted them. We had to announce. That we made the strike. Don't listen to these idiots online. They have no idea what they are talking about. Anyway, let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, we had this bomb threat on a plane today. We don't know how legitimate this is, whether the passenger himself actually made a threat or if it was something that was on his phone that a passenger next to him saw. We're not 100% sure. But obviously a scary time, and this goes to what we were talking about earlier about situational awareness right now. and understand that as an American, you are a target, not just from foreign enemies, but from radicals in the United States as well. Those are the flight attendants telling people to keep their heads down, hands up. The SWAT is coming on the plane to remove the suspected terrorist.
Stand up, let's go. Stand up. Everybody heads down. Stand up. Stand up.
Remember, too, that they don't, nor should they, mess around on a plane. Okay? Don't bother screeching about your rights or anything else, because they're not going to screw around on a plane. People do crazy things when they're confined in tiny little capsules. They don't screw around. Now, I thought I had another angle of that, too. Look in here. Hang on. Let's see. Give me just 1 second here. I'm trying to see. I thought I had a better angle. A better video altogether. Apparently not. I guess not. Okay. Well, there you go. It turns out that there was no legitimate threat, but we don't know much more about it. Again, we don't really know what exactly triggered them into taking the guy off the plane in that way, but we do know that it was allegedly a bomb threat. That's all we really have to go on right there. Here are some claims coming from inside of Iran. This is an American Iranian that is claiming that people in Iran have told him this. Take it for what it's worth. Could be entire BS. But I thought it was an interesting claim from somebody that claims to have inside sources.
How much more proof do you need that the Islamic Republic is moving its troops and command centers into children's school? If you look at these photos and videos and still claim that this isn't real, then your defense isn't about Iranian lives or human rights. It is about your refusal to believe the truth. Even when the truth is right in front of your face, you reject it because it doesn't fit your narrative. There is no way for you to see the truth after this.
Yeah, we call them leftists,
These are
buddy.
facts. We are Iranians. Our friends and family inside Iran are witnessing this right now. They see troops evacuating military bases and moving into schools to use children as human shields, hoping to blame the US or Israel if they are hit. The regime is even attacking schools themselves just to stage a scene for the cameras. We have eyewitnesses there. If you still choose to look away, your war is not about justice. It's about what is stuck in your head. You talk about Israel.
All right. Enough of that. Take that for what it's worth or not worth to you. But with all the nonsense going around, you know, it's interesting to hear the opposite perspective. So, leftists are claiming today, too, that Trump has three options now. Retreat from Iran and lose the Middle East forever, and Israel is destroyed. Pretty sure if we retreated from Iran right now, nothing would happen. In 10 years, maybe, once they've rebuilt some, you might get some sort of retaliation. 2, put boots on the ground and lose thousands and thousands of U.S. troops. We're not going to put boots on the ground. If we did, we wouldn't lose thousands. The vast majority of the Iranian people are not. They probably would prefer us to put boots on the ground and go door to door and eliminate this violent regime. We're not going to. That's going to have to be their job. But number 3, bomb Iran with nukes and risk global destruction. Also not going to happen, guys. Is this just wishful thinking by leftists? I don't understand. Those are not the only 3 options. Other option is that this air campaign works, largely. Iranians take over their government, and while we probably won't have a perfect outcome from it, we might at least have a peaceful Iran, an Iran that doesn't chant death to America every day in their state halls. Seems like a win to me. I don't understand, I don't understand how you can hate, or let me rephrase that. I don't understand how you can defend people that literally want you dead for being American. Doesn't matter if you're leftist. Doesn't matter if you're supporting their cause right this minute. They still want you dead. And they will still kill you tomorrow once you're not worthy or helpful to furthering their cause. Let's take a look at some more propaganda coming out of this war. I'm wondering if this is their attempt to counter the videos that the White House is putting out. That's a cute video and all. But the fact is, Iran hasn't shot down a single aircraft yet. In fact, we shot down an aircraft. And it was the first dogfight since World War II, the first air-to-air takedown since World War II. Oh, that was a failed rocket. It's a cute video, but hundreds, thousands of American aircraft have been flying over your country for days. You haven't shot down one, so see what else is going on here. I'm checking for any breaking news. Since we've been on air, 3 arrested after devices thrown at anti-Islam protesters in New York City. Let's check and see. That's posted less than an hour ago, so let's check and see if they have any updates for us on that. 3 arrested is interesting because we only saw 2 arrested at the time. Associated with far-right activist and pardoned January 6 rioter Jake Lang, shot pepper spray into the counter-protesting group near the mayoral residence Gracie Mansion, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said. Yeah, they didn't mention the fact that that group violently attacked them. I don't have the video of it. I saw it earlier, but I couldn't find it again for the show. If I see it here, I will show it to you. But they were walking down the street. The Antifa surrounded, started attacking them, and he sprayed pepper spray, trying to retreat and get away. It was only the police that saved them, and then arrested him for spraying pepper spray. The device struck a barrier and extinguished itself a few feet from police officers, she said. The same person then ran, and another person gave him a second device, which they then dropped. The devices were wrapped in black tape with nuts, bolts, screws, as well as a fuse. She said it was unclear whether the devices were functioning explosive or hoaxes. 3 people were arrested. Investigation is underway. Tish, at a news conference, didn't report any injuries, said she believed Mondami was not at Gracie at the time. She said about 20 people showed up to Saturday's protest connected to Lang, and the counter-protesters had 125 people at its peak. Lang was charged with assaulting a police officer with a baseball bat, civil disorder, and other crimes before receiving a pardon as part of President Trump's sweeping act of clemency for January 6 defendants last year. Lang recently announced that he is running for U.S. Senate in Florida. Last month, Lang staged an anti-Islam protest in Minneapolis during the Trump administration's immigration crackdown there. That comes from the LA Times, by the way. We also reported on an explosion at the U.S. Embassy in Oslo. And looks like I'm checking the latest story on that. Around 1 a.m. received several reports of explosions. Arrived short time later, determined that there had been an explosion that hit the doorway of the American embassy. I'm not seeing any updated information, though. Police have large resources in the area around the U.S. Embassy, according to a log. At approximately 0100, a loud bang explosion was reported at the scene. The police are in dialogue with the embassy. No injuries have been reported. Currently, no information about exactly what happened or who might be involved. Still nothing there either. All right. Anything else breaking right now? Something about ICE receiving a legal blow, but I actually have some good news on that too. Yeah, just stuff from leftist judges that doesn't really matter. Okay. I don't even want to report that. Let's see what John Fetterman has to say. Fetterman is one of the biggest surprises, I think, in the Senate. John Fetterman slams fellow Democrats for criticizing Iran war. Why do they now universally condemn something that achieves a Democrat top priority? Hillary Clinton says she will not hesitate to take military action if Iran attempts to get a nuclear weapon. Kamala Harris says Iran is greatest adversary of the U.S. Those are 2 headlines, one from Al Jazeera, one from, I think, the AP. It's cut off a little bit, that John Fetterman posted. It says Democratic Senator John Fetterman slammed fellow Democrats who have been criticizing the Trump administration over the Iran war. In a social media post, Fetterman recalled statements from the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, and presidential candidate Kamala Harris on the matter. The former said in 2015 that she would not hesitate to take military action if the country sought to obtain a nuclear weapon, while the latter noted that Iran is the greatest adversary of the U.S. Why do Democrats now universally condemn what achieves a long-standing Democratic priority? He also backed a remark from Trump, who said U.S. forces should clean out everything with regards to Iranian leadership. Fetterman has highly supportive of the war effort, being the lone Democrat senator to vote against the War Powers Resolution seeking to limit Trump's ability to continue waging war in Iran this week. The vote was 53-47. short of the simple majority needed to move the resolution to the Senate floor, rather. It sought to remove the United States Armed Forces from hostilities within or against Iran unless explicitly authorized by a declaration of war or a specific authorization for use of military force. It was introduced by Senator Tim Kaine. Yeah, and it was largely a show. Presidents have had this ability for 50 years. Fetterman had already anticipated he would reject the initiative, slamming the fellow senators who planned it. By the way, I honestly wish they would have let it go through, because there's no way in hell Democrats would have actually stopped the military right now. The worst thing that they could possibly do was stop after we've already started. In a social media publication, Fetterman said that every member in the U.S. Senate agrees we cannot allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. So, he was baffled why so many are unwilling to support the only action to achieve that, empty sloganeering versus commitment to global security. Which is it, said Fetterman. Fetterman immediately came out to support the strikes on Iran on Saturday, praising Trump for being willing to do what's right, necessary to produce real peace in the region. Well, it's more than most Republicans said. All right, let's turn to some other news that we've kind of missed throughout the week here. Oh, actually, before we do that, I have this one other story here from Sky News. So I'll double check here. What country? Sky News, I believe, is Australia. Let's see. No, it's British. Okay. Sky News is from Britain. And we have this report from them. Donald Trump's war with Iran is going global. This is a chaotic and dangerous moment.
The UK is preparing an aircraft.
I'm going to play this. It is probably one of the most useless news statements I have ever heard.
The UK is preparing an aircraft carrier for possible deployment to the Middle East. But what firepower would HMS Prince of Wales bring to the fight? And is it really needed? Sky News understands that the Royal Navy is reducing the notice for its giant warship to mobilise to 5 days from 10. Crews have been alerted. It means the vessel could be sent into action faster should the Prime Minister decide he wants to use it in the wake of Donald Trump's war in Iran. No such decision has been taken, though.
So then why are you reporting it? Also, it's worth noting that most likely this would be being sent closer to the region so that, if necessary, British F-35s could help be used to counter Iranian missiles. This is probably in anticipation of the possibility that Iran is holding back some missiles until our launchers have been more depleted. And so more aircraft in the air means more ways to shoot down missiles and drones in particular. Because the concern is, while it seems they're very clearly running out of both, the concern is there's still a decent stockpile of the drones. And the drones are easy to shoot down. The problem is, of course, the overwhelming numbers. If you have 10 F-35s in the air, no small number, and they launch 50 drones, each one of those aircraft now needs to shoot down 5 before those drones reach their target. Now, they only cruise at 155 miles an hour, the drones do, so it's not too hard. But it is still a problem nonetheless. More aircraft makes that more likely.
Why Britain might want to deploy an aircraft carrier. It's basically a floating airfield for F-35 jets.
No kidding. An aircraft carrier is a floating airfield for jets? Wow. Hard-hitting news here, Sky.
6 of these aircraft are already operating from a UK base in Cyprus, but the carrier would be able to position them closer to a target if, for example, Britain were to join the US and Israel in striking Iran directly. There's no indication of that kind of policy change, though, at least not yet.
So again, why are you saying it?
Sending a carrier into a region that's under attack from Iranian drones and missiles would be high risk. The US...
No kidding.
...is using its aircraft carriers in the war, but they're heavily defended by warships and submarines. Decades of defence cuts in the UK means options to protect the Prince of Wales are limited. In fact,
yeah, we've been trying to tell you for a long time to step up. We've been trying to tell you for a long time that trying to leave all this on American shoulders is not only not fair, it's stupid. But that's your problem.
commanders would likely have to rely on support from allies to avoid their big ship becoming just another target.
Yeah. You know, the F-35s on board might be able to do something about it too, but...
Good afternoon. Sky News understands the UK is preparing its largest aircraft carrier for possible deployment to the Middle East. The readiness time of HMS Prince of Wales is being halved to 5 days, so it can respond more rapidly if a decision is taken to mobilise. Our security and defence editor Deborah Haynes has more details.
The readiness to deploy for that warship has been reduced from 10 days' notice to move to 5 days' notice to move, and that is, of course, a move that's happened in case the Prime Minister decides that he wants to send this warship to the Middle East.
You don't say.
So we've been told that crews have been alerted to this, obviously reducing a ship to that much higher level of readiness to deploy. It won't happen immediately, so it's happening now, that sort of transition from 10 days to 5 days notice. It will also involve greater provisions of stores to the ship to make sure that it can move if the decision is taken to send it to the Gulf or maybe to the Mediterranean to bolster defences around Cyprus. I was talking to an analyst earlier who was sort of speculating what might you want to use the aircraft carrier for, because obviously when it goes somewhere, it's armed with F-35 jets. It's basically a giant floating airfield. And so if we had F-35 spare, we've obviously sent 6 to Cyprus so far. We only have, I think, 2 squadrons. So the maximum we can really muster and have done so far in terms of deploying them all together is about 24. But if we wanted to potentially use F-35 jets to strike targets, if a decision was taken by the UK to maybe launch strikes into Iran, and that's absolutely not been something that's been agreed or anything as things stand.
Okay.
But
this is all meaningless reporting that means literally nothing at all. Apparently, Britain is sending getting the Prince of Wales ready to potentially come and help us, but there have been literally no decisions made. All right. So that's that. Time is actually reporting that Iran has distracted and depleted the U.S. military, but maybe has also saved Taiwan. Interesting to see that they're willing to report anything somewhat beneficial towards the president. At first blush, Thursday's opening of China's National People's Congress looked ominous for Taiwan. Taking the podium in Beijing's cavernous Great Hall of the People, Premier Li Qiang unveiled a 7% bump on defense spending while using strident language for the self-ruling island, over which China claims dominion. While vowing the People's Liberation Army would accelerate the development of advanced combat capabilities, a meaningless statement, Li said China would resolutely crack down on separatist activities in Taiwan and noted upgrade on last year's promise to simply oppose them. Given U.S. President Donald Trump's ongoing war with Iran has depleted stocks of sophisticated weapon systems vital to defend the island, nerves were already jangling in Taiwan, as well as Ukraine, and indeed, Washington. Questions about U.S. weapon reserves were raised during the closed-door briefing between senior Trump administration officials and members of Congress on Tuesday, according to sources. With the U.S. military depleted and distracted by a conflict on the other side of the globe, we're not all that distracted. We have 9 aircraft carriers doing nothing right now. We have 2 involved in Iran. We're all right. While the U.S. is distracted side of the globe, observers worried that Chinese strongman Xi Jinping may never have had the better opportunity to move on the democratic island of 23 million. Yeah, here's the thing. They're in the worst position they've ever been in. whose reunification he has called the great trend of history. The fear is that Trump's transactional bearing and embrace of might and right doctrine, both in his own actions and his ambivalence regarding Russia's invasion of Ukraine, could be interpreted as a green light by Xi. Will Xi be tempted to take advantage of the U.S. potentially exhausting smart munitions and attack Taiwan even if the PLA is not fully ready, asked Professor Steve Zhang, director of the SOAS China Institute at the University of London. Possible. That's all he said. Possible. However, other indicators point in the opposite direction. That is, the U.S. assault on Iran has in fact secured Taiwan's de facto independence in short term. While American officials have offered dubious and contradictory rationales for war, not really. What will eventually arise from the rubble is anything but clear. There's no denying that operationally at least, the U.S. strikes have been a stunning success. In the first 4 days of the conflict, the U.S. attacked close to 2,000 targets, including 16 ships, sinking an Iranian frigate some 2,000 miles from Iran near Sri Lanka, as well as a submarine. Moreover, its successful decapitation strikes against Ayatollah al-Khamenei and his chief acolytes following the daring capture of Venezuelan despot Nicolas Maduro indicates a prowess of intelligence and wherewithal that contrasts with the PLA that hasn't fought a major war for almost half a century. And it lost that one. The specter of the decapitation strike has been proven a more realistic scenario, says Wen T. Sung, a political science based in Taiwan for the Australian National University. China's first reaction will be, this could happen here. Yeah, it could. Another factor, especially since we've proven that our planes fly with immunity over Chinese skies. Another factor is the suspect performance of China's own military equipment in Iran, which had reportedly purchased kamikaze drones and air defense capabilities from Beijing. Moreover, Iran was negotiating to buy Chinese advanced anti-ship missiles, though it's unclear whether these had been installed. Beijing's best hope of saving face is that they were not yet operational. If they were, that is even more damning, not least after the advanced Chinese radar and anti-aircraft systems purchased by Venezuela failed to detect U.S. stealth jets as they were supposed to. China will be looking to learn from the failings of their own equipment in both Venezuela and Iran, says Chongjong Yan, professor of international relations at the National University of Singapore, and I think they are somewhat surprised by the demonstration of U.S. force and its ability to execute pretty complex operations. Yeah, they're more than somewhat surprised. Even Americans were surprised at how great our military has done in these last few operations. It's amazing what competent leadership can do. Well, that and getting rid of all of the mentally ill people from your military. Then, there are the effects of the Iran war itself. On a purely diplomatic level, China has been humbled. For decades, that Iranian proxies had targeted American allies with relative impunity had been a source of schadenfreude for Beijing, no idea what that means, but that the world's number 2 economy, which reveled in its peacemaking role after brokering the reestablishment of diplomatic ties between Tehran and Riyadh in 2023, has been reduced to issuing glib condemnations and dispatching peace envoys to the region spotlights Beijing's true impotence. China is proving to be a feckless friend for its authoritarian allies. Nicholas Burns, U.S. Ambassador to China under the President Joe Biden. Economically, China also suffers. China was the top purchaser of both Venezuelan and Iranian oil, accounting for 4% and 13% of imports, respectively. But more broadly, half of China's oil and almost a third of its liquefied natural gas comes from the Middle East, which is suffering widespread disruption, especially in the Iranian blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Beijing has significant oil reserves and is transitioning to green alternatives, though a clear message that its near-term energy needs to be acutely vulnerable to U.S. action. Yeah. By the way, its near-term energy needs are acutely vulnerable. It doesn't have significant stockpiles. It has 100 days. That's virtually nothing. Second, the green energy is a joke. That will not provide even military bases enough energy during emergency times. Let alone all their people would be in the dark starving. Oil is what runs this globe now and for the next probably 1,000 years, but definitely next 100 years. at least until we start investing in nuclear again like smart people. Once we get fusion figured out, we have fusion figured out, but once we get fusion figured out on tiny reactions, there'll be almost no waste that goes with it. Anyway, besides Chinese designs on Taiwan hinge on U.S. not getting involved. And while Trump's foreign policy has been schizophrenic, to say the least, yeah, there's a reason for that. And alienating to his MAGA base, not really. Washington's latest national defense strategy clearly states the U.S. will erect a strong denial defense along the first island chain. Good. Which includes Taiwan. My sense is Xi assumes America would come to Taiwan's defense and thus won't attack anytime soon, says Sean King, Senior Vice President, focusing on Asia for consulting firm Park Strategies. Indeed, while Lee's work report does take a hawkish tone regarding Taiwan, there are caveats. The 7% defense budget bump is far greater than GDP target of 4.5% to 5%, the lowest GDP target in decades, though notably less than the 7.2% defense budget of the previous years. The PLA is also in the midst of a purge of unprecedented since Mao's era, with the NPC removing 9 military officials, including several high-ranking generals from the PLA deputy list. Regarding anti-corruption efforts, Lee said the political rectification of the military will continue to deepen, to uphold the Communist Party absolute leadership over the People's Armed Forces. That the military purge is ongoing raises serious questions about the PLA's command structure and combat readiness for any Taiwan contingency. Or, generally when you have to keep your people in line via threat of death, it doesn't work well for a military. The number one advantage that the American military has over every military in the world is that our people volunteer. Our people want to defend our country. They want to defend our freedom. Even when we don't necessarily agree with the ways in which we're going about it. It's hard to overestimate, rather, the value of that when you consider conscripts in most other militaries that are forced to participate. Moreover, last year, Lee spoke of improving China's Taiwan policy framework. But this time he talked about deepening it, indicating things are already largely on the right track. The inference is that Beijing only needs to do more rather than do things differently on Taiwan. This is largely because Taiwan's ruling China skeptic Democratic Progressive Party is all at sea. With low approval ratings and deadlocked legislature, political infighting and failed recall campaign that aim to unseat lawmakers for the pro-Beijing Opposition Nationalist Party, or KMT. These doldrums have spurred a revival for the KMT, which seeks security in closer ties with Beijing. And the KMT's message is gaining credence precisely because of the mercurial nature of Trump's administration, as spotlighted by the Iran war, which has cast grave doubt on U.S. security guarantees. We never guaranteed Iran any security. Indeed, Taiwan only featured towards the end of Lee's work report, as is typical. The overall focus was overwhelming on fixing China's floundering economy, with action to tackle unemployment and depressed real estate market and boosting innovation. After last year's dizzying exchange of tariffs and counter-tariffs, there are signs of a partial easing of trade friction between China and the U.S., with Xi and Trump set to meet face-to-face at the end of this month. It's not in Xi's interest to rock the boat when the mood in Taiwan appears to be turning more conciliatory, even if purely out of expedience. It will be reckless for Xi to order an invasion unless he absolutely sure the U.S. cannot interfere, and victory is assured and at a relatively low cost, said Zhang. He has not been reckless in the last 13 years. Yeah, there's no chance in hell. Unless he's an idiot. Unless he really is an idiot, there's no chance in hell. Because there is absolutely no way on paper or in theory, let alone in practice, that Xi could guarantee taking Taiwan in anything less than 10 years, basically, at this point, especially given the fact that every citizen in Taiwan is armed, much like the United States, and committed to defending the island, and we would be able to put planes over his head within a day. He would have to spend his whole time running and hiding. Let's talk about California gas prices real quick. The news trying to cover for California put out this little graphic here. Newsweek. Map shows states hit hardest by gas price surge amid Iran war. Gas prices in the U.S. are expected to continue soaring unless the Strait of Hormuz reopens. What do you notice about every single one of those states that is red? Or even orange, except for one? Maybe two? And what do you notice about all the ones that are green and blue? Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Arizona, all Democrat run. Michigan, Illinois, Democrat run. Pennsylvania, Democrat run. New York, Maine, Democrat run. Oh, I always get Virginia, D.C., Democrat run. Maryland, Democrat run. And I always forget which one of these is which. So one of those could be Republican, but I don't remember which is which, like I said. And then Florida. But Florida prices could be higher for a number of reasons, including the war. I can tell you right now, gas prices are not high in Washington because of the war. First of all, gas prices per barrel ticked up like a couple bucks per barrel. They were $130 under Joe Biden. They got as high as 77 from 75 or 74 or something like that. Gas in Washington, $4.50 a gallon. Why? Taxes, which they just passed. They just overturned our state constitution and passed an income tax yesterday. They've implemented about 9 taxes in this state this year. When I say implemented, they either implemented or increased existing. Either way, more taxes. We have the second highest gas prices in the nation. California has the first. As much as $8.50 a gallon. And it's only about to get worse for California. And no, not because of Iran. We only get like 5% of our oil from the Strait of Hormuz. It's not affecting us. And especially not with this windfall from Venezuela. The idea that we can't process their crude is incorrect. We are the only place that can process Venezuelan crude. We used to all the time, but when they went socialist, they stopped letting us. Now we can again. Anyway, this is why gas prices are so high in California. It's their special blends. There are something like 100 plus different blends of gasoline across the country because of the endangerment finding BS back in 2007. This goes to the video we watched earlier about Cash for Clunkers and them crushing all of the easy-to-work-on cars. Why? The, 0.02% improvement in emissions you get is not worth the insanely complex logistics required to have different blends of fuel in every single county of every single state. It's bad enough that we switch from one blend to the other during winter and summer. But most people aren't aware. We switch from one blend to the other in every individual state, just about. Most red states operate on similar terms. But as far as the blue states, every blue state takes different type of gas. That means that refineries have to run gas for your state specifically, and then run gas for California specifically, probably 4 or 5 different blends just for California, all to make a 0.02% difference in end emissions. It's absurd, and it adds an insane amount of cost to the gas. We could still have $1 a gallon gas if it weren't for these ridiculous rules that don't provide anywhere near the environmental protections that we were promised. See, I don't want to get rid of environmental protections that do actually lead to a cleaner environment, okay? What I want to get rid of is all of the protections that were added on top of those that don't do anything at all except increase cost, like NEPA. The reason refineries only close and can't open is in largest part because of one law entitled NEPA, N-E-E-P-A, National Environmental Something 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 Act. Probably Protection Act. Anyway, maybe it's just National Environmental Protection Act. Maybe that's what it was. All that NEPA does is 2 things. It requires that all environmental effects are documented. Not that anything is done about them, just that they are documented. So, if we're going to build a factory and we're going to dump pollution directly into the water table, the only thing NEPA requires is that we document that we're doing it. It doesn't require us to stop it at all. It just requires that we document it. Why? That in and of itself adds years and millions of dollars to any project. Now, on top of that, any commercial project, any government project, FYI. On top of that, it allows anybody, including NGOs and foreign adversaries, to sue the company or the government because they didn't do something right on the NEPA documentation. They forgot to put a period. Which then means that company now has to go to court, spend millions of more dollars, wait years longer, because some jackass who knows nothing about building an oil refinery sued because he noticed that a period was out of place on this paperwork, or because he thinks that oil's bad, and so he just sued to sue, which is generally what happens. These NGOs that are, WEF progressive organizations, or belong to adversaries like China who just don't want us to increase our industrial base, sue and jack the cost, all to eventually allow the place to build anyway. Because they can't stop them. They can just drastically increase the cost and how long it takes for them to actually get the project done. For what? Nothing. It does nothing to stop. The company could still directly pollute into the water table if they wanted to. And none of those lawsuits, nor the paperwork, is going to stop it. They just have to document it and pay for the lawyers and bullshit to go through the court system. What good does that do for us? Nothing. It just makes the end cost of that product, or if it's a government project, that project cost way more for the taxpayers. Example, they were going to build a desalination plant in San Diego, California, place that's short on one thing, water. They were going to build a desalination plant for drinking water. It was going to cost $1 million and take 1 year. Because somebody sued on the NEPA paperwork because they didn't, they didn't write a letter to the spotted owl before they cut down a tree to put the building in. It took 10 years and $10 million, $12 million actually. 10 years, $12 million to build the same desalination plant that would have cost $1 million and taken 1 year. Did anything change because of these lawsuits? No, nothing at all. Why? Why? It's the same thing with refineries. Gas keeps going up because refineries have to keep closing because they can't build new ones. It's impossible. I don't get why we allow it, and I don't get why Congress hasn't dealt with it. Liberals and progressives are just able to pass whatever bullshit 10,000-page law they want, and no matter how much it fucks up our healthcare, no matter how much it fucks up our industry, no matter how much it fucks up jobs or anything else, we're just supposed to live with it and never undo it. Because it would be such a nightmare to undo. I don't want to go down the road of healthcare. But just as an example, Obamacare, which has proven to be nothing but a complete disaster that is costing every American an insane amount of money and giving us virtually nothing in return for it. Why can't we just undo it? We now spend 70%, between 60 and 70, depending on the estimates that you look at, on healthcare. Every year. Before Obamacare, it was about 20%. Guess what? Poor people and old people were still covered. You know who wasn't? Fucking illegals. People who have no business being here at all. California's unique, more environmentally friendly gasoline blend is more at risk from global oil turmoil that and could send prices skyrocketing, according to experts. Golden State drivers already face the highest gas prices in the country. Now, a combination of reliance on foreign oil, because California has been having to sneak oil from places they're not supposed to buy it from. They send it to like Guam or something, and then they buy it from Guam in order to make up for their big downfall. Now a combination of reliance on foreign oil, shutting domestic refineries, and regulatory changes can make filling up even more miserable experience. That's the goal. What do you not understand, Californians? That is your government's goal. They're lying to you. If they wanted to fix it, they could fix it tomorrow. They don't want to. They don't want you driving. They want to make it so expensive that you either buy an EV or start taking the bus. And the fact that you don't see that at this point, things don't just magically keep going up and up and up. Not when gas is $1.87 in Texas. What makes California so much different? You have more drivers, more buyers, more industry, more refineries. Your gas should be cheaper. But jacking the price up is the goal. Just like spending more money and raising taxes is the goal. To meet the state's strict environmental requirements for reducing smog and other pollutants, which has just done wonders for LA, hasn't it? Oh yeah, no problems at all down there in LA. California requires a special, cleaner burning fuel blend known as California reformulated gasoline. This blend is produced mostly by California's dwindling supply of domestic refineries and select Asian countries including China, India, and Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and South Korea. You guys are funding China directly, adding an estimated 10 to 15 cents to the cost per gallon. Yeah, I guarantee it's more than that. It certainly doesn't explain why it's $8.50 a gallon there. There's one eye on Asia and one eye on the Middle East right now, according to University of Southern California Associate Professor Mike Misch. Now you have a major geopolitical event. This is not a little event. This is a big event, he added, warning that California's reliance on foreign gas imports was now possessing a higher risk. The state is losing about 20% of its domestic gasoline production due to the recent closure of the Phillips 66 refinery in Los Angeles. Why? Because they weren't able to upgrade it. Because of the environmental regulations. Why? Why do we have to send these jobs? So literally, because of the regulations that Newsom put in place, those jobs, all the Americans that were making six figures over at the Phillips 66 refinery, all those jobs are now going to some Chinese fucks. And all those Americans are screwed. Why? You still need the gasoline. The pollutants are still going into the air. You think China makes the gasoline cleaner than we make it? No. The state is losing 20% of its domestic gasoline production due to recent closure of the Phillips 66 refinery in Los Angeles and Valero's plan to cease operations at its Benicia facility in April. Prices are already high in California because of taxes, but what if you can't get the products that you need? Chevron Global Refining President Andy Waltz said, pointing out that his company's Richmond refinery supplies 60% of the jet fuel to the San Francisco airport. California's 7 remaining major refineries, including 2 Chevron facilities in Richmond and El Segundo, are now warning that newly proposed regulations from the California Air Resources Board, CARB, could further threaten state production. The regulations aim to meet Governor Gavin Newsom's climate policy of zero emissions by 2045. You know what zero emissions means? Zero human life. You cannot survive modern life without oil. Zero emissions means zero humans. And that is not hyperbole. The new amendments to California's cap and investment program would mean fewer permits, higher fees for in-state refineries while permitting polluters to buy credits. Why? Why? The only thing this leads to is higher gas prices. It's not actually leading to less pollution. It's only leading to higher gas prices because the government has decided you need to pay more for the gas. That's it. How fucking dumb can you be? If carbon allowance prices hit their maximum, gas could surge up by 74 cents per gallon, according to the nonpartisan Legislative Analyst's Office, which means more likely, probably closer to $2 a gallon. I do think it's insensitive, and I also think it's somewhat irresponsible. Misch said of CARB's proposal, which California Democrats have defended, an economy relying on fossil fuels will always be subject to geopolitical tension and price spikes. California Senate President pro tempore Monique Limon told ABC 10. The conflict in Iran has caused gas prices to rise 11 cents overnight, reaffirming that the state must move towards a transition to clean energy. And a goal that cap and investment is designed to support, she added, and has done nothing to achieve it. Until the technology improves, you're not going to get any closer. You're just going to charge more money. That's it. Which means fucking the poorest people in California the most.
In the North Bay, we saw one station. It shot up 40 cents since yesterday. Crown 4's Teresa Stasio has been tracking gas prices. She's live in Marin with the latest. Teresa, it was 30 cents and our jaws dropped, and then they went 10 more. 40 cents in one day?
My jaw is continuing to drop. Gas stations are showing these incredible hikes. At this gas station in Mill Valley, it went up 30 cents this morning, and when I was live at noon, it jumped another 10 cents.
It's a little pricey.
Well, it's outrageous. I don't even know.
On Friday, anxiety and alarm about the price at the pump. Our cameras caught this station posting not one, but 3 jumps in one morning from $5.29 to $5.69 in the course of 4 hours.
I live in San Francisco and I'm almost on empty, so how I'm dealing with it is I'll pay it, but I don't pay that in San Francisco even, so it's robbery.
Well, I live in Santa Rosa and I commute to San Francisco every day, so I probably should get a more fuel-efficient vehicle, but even then it's going to be expensive.
This driver filling up with diesel feeling an even bigger pinch.
$7 a gallon, I don't think I can drive my diesel anymore. Next week it'll be $8.
AAA reported on Thursday prices have jumped 18 cents in a few days. Now at the end of the week, an even higher spike. A gas expert from UC Berkeley's business school who has been tracking gas prices in the state of California for decades gave a breakdown of what we are seeing and what he thinks may come next.
Oil prices are up about $25 a barrel since the beginning of the attack last Friday. Eventually, if that holds, that will translate at the pump to over 60 cents a gallon. We've only seen an
Okay, how do you account for the other 250?
Increase of about 30 cents a gallon. So I think we have a long ways to go if the price of oil stays that high. Now, you don't know what's going to happen. The events are obviously evolving very quickly, but the gasoline market responds quite rapidly to increases in the price of crude oil, and that's what we're seeing right now. And we are likely to see more of it if the price of crude oil stays this high, and particularly if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed.
Now, bottom line, I asked the expert whether we're going to see $6 a gallon. He says that it's unclear if it's going to go that high. He said that the only thing that is clear is that it is a very volatile market. And he says that the best thing to do right now, shop around in Mill Valley. Teresa Stasio, back to you, Grant.
Well, it's already $5.70 behind you, so $6 isn't that far off. Thank you, Teresa. All right, let's get a look at gas prices in some other parts of the Bay. San Mateo, Sonoma, and San Francisco counties are all now north of $5 on average for a gallon of regular, and this stuff is fluctuating as we speak. Napa County, Contra Costa County, both at $4.95. Gas in Alameda County is up to $4.91. Santa Clara County, $4.86. And Solano County's the deal at $4.80 on average.
I don't understand it. Why do you guys keep putting up with it? It's not magic. They just said $25 a barrel would only raise the price 60 cents. How do you account for the other $3? It's all entirely unnecessary taxes. I've driven in California before. The roads ain't shit. Don't forget to like, follow the show, JBU_show on x.com/JBU_show. You can check out my buddy Miller, Austin from the Miller Talk podcast, millertalk.substack.com. I appreciate you guys being here this weekend. We will be back with you on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock on Sunday. With that, my name is Chris, and this has been The JBU Show.